Man, my head hurts. Oh man, it really freaking hurts. It's not a pain behind the eyes or some sort of sinus pressure either. It's more like an all-brain encompassing throbbing cacophony of torture. I lay motionless as I let my senses take in my environment. I can feel the sun on my skin. There is a smell and feel of grass against my face and arms. I slowly open my eyes, squinting against the brightness. Oh, it even hurts to move my eyeballs. This is some serious migraine shit. Why am I lying face down in tall field grass? My mind is clouded as I slowly wake up from a deep sleep. It's not fully matured grass, it's not like that of late summer or fall, this grass is more lush green and wet like that of spring. I close my eyes against the sun and continue to lay motionless on my stomach. I can feel a light breeze on the exposed skin of my back. An assortment of the sounds of nature all around me. The confusion starts to wane and clarity begins to penetrate the ocean of pain that is my head. I run my hands down the outside of my thigh. The smooth bare skin is all I found. I'm not wearing anything. Not a big surprise. I always sleep naked, but why am I in a field? Did I drink too much or maybe someone slipped something in my drink? My ass doesn't hurt, that's at least a good sign. I don't feel injured other than my throbbing head. I should be at home in my bed. Where did all this grass come from? My body protested as I rolled up onto my side. I chanced the bright light as I opened my eyes and peered out to survey my surroundings. I see trees and forest, several dead stands and what looks like a new growth clearing. Some charring still visible on the dead stand confirms my observation. I move into a sitting position, wincing against the ache of my body, impressions on my skin from the grass I've been sleeping in. I've been here a while, maybe a few hours. I'm on a slight incline with my head lower than my feet. Well, okay, that explains the headache. I know better, I learned that lesson early on as a kid. I would never willingly sleep in this position. I take in a deep breath and continue my attempt to understand what's going on. Unknown bird calls erupt off in the distance. Something like cicadas are buzzing in the trees around me. A deep rhythmic thrumming instead of the buzzing of what I would have identified as a cicada. I focus my mind and delve into my most recent memories. I was at home. I had eaten dinner and I was playing a robot combat shooter on my computer. I was smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee. My memory gets fuzzy, something happened, but what was it? My mind goes blank and then I was here in this field. Something must have happened, I might have fallen asleep, but I have no memory of it. A blank spot where a memory should be. Naked, why am I naked? I take another deep breath and let it out slowly. Okay, no more questions, now is the time for actions. I let my senses take in my environment. I'm in survival mode now, determine threat levels then make a plan. My military training takes over. I can't find solutions till after I identify the problems. I lower myself back onto my stomach. Eyes now wide open, I listen, scan for threats, I need to focus, be alert. I need to get my bearings, move to cover. Never cross an open field, it makes you vulnerable, that's what my training tells me. Exposed, I'm easily spotted from a distance. I take a quick glance upward, the sun is up in an overcast sky. Temperature is more like that of morning and less harsh than an afternoon sun. It's approximately 10 a.m., I'm in a temperate forest, the trees' leaves here are an off-green color. They all have a waxy texture and too much yellow. It's more of a Kentucky feel than a New York feel. I always hated the trees in Kentucky. They just felt off, never the familiar comfort of the greenery back home. I spot some dense cover to my left 10 to 15 yards, I started to move. I keep my head below the top of the grass in what we called a low crawl in the military. I had only just started to move when nearby a bunch of winged birds erupted from the grassy clearing, quickly fleeing into the sky. Startled, my heart now beating rapidly as I froze in place. Red? They looked like red pheasants. Damn, where the heck am I? Need to get moving, where the heck am I, and what is this grass? I've never seen field grass like this. I worked farms as a kid, throwing hay bales around summer after summer. I know grass, I've seen it dozens of different field types, but I've definitely never seen grass like this. I rose back up on my arms and took a quick look around. This field is full of odd-looking grass and has a sprinkling of blue flower blooms. I'm sure that I'm not in the US, could it be Southeast Asia? Or maybe it could be somewhere in South America. This is not a thought based on any actual knowledge, but rather ponderings based on the lack of knowledge. I'm in an unfamiliar region, I've traveled all over the US, and I've never been in a place like this. So was I abducted and moved? Who would do this? Maybe they dropped me onto an island someplace. But why? Am I going to be hunted for sport? Memories of various movies pop into my mind. Is this some cruel game set up by sadistic rich people? I moved quickly and quietly into the thick underbrush. Some kind of thistles or nettle-like plants. Just my luck, my skin protests as the tiny leaves brush against my naked skin, instantly taking on an itchy, irritated feeling. I lay motionless for about 10 full minutes. I carefully listened to unfamiliar sounds and taking note of any unfamiliar insects. I observed several six-legged spider-like bugs crawling randomly on the leaves here. They seem to be foraging here with what looks like little webbed balls or packs on their thorax. Some kind of ant bug, but has web glands. I know some ant species try to look like spiders, but like this is a spider trying to look like an ant. They obviously have web glands not for the purpose of hunting, but rather for transporting the little bits and pieces around. They must be heading back to some unseen nest. Well, okay then, I decide to stand up. I don't detect any threats nearby. Actually, I feel safe. I've always been a big nature nut. I'm quite at home traipsing around in the wilderness. I move slowly as to not spook any more wildlife that may be hidden nearby. I carefully look into the forest around me. I begin moving from one foot to the other. A trick I learned as a kid while observing deer. I mimicked this behavior as a kid. Doing this, I figured out that I can see past all the trees better, and even with such slight movements, sound reaches my ears differently. In the forest, sounds are reflected amongst the trees. This makes it difficult to know which direction sounds are reaching you from. While making these swaying motions, it somehow makes things more clear and easily discerned. I learned so much just by observing the behavior of animals and by using my head to consider and understand why animals behave the way they do. Maybe it's all part of being autistic. Didn't know I was autistic till I was in my 40s. Cruel trick that was. Regardless, I was a smart kid, didn't realize it till I was an adult though. It wasn't till after years of therapy before I figured it out. Too stupid to realize just how smart I was. A symptom from bad programming. My counselor had to literally convince me of it. He used examples, even gave me an IQ test. It was all because of the trauma, really. So much childhood trauma. I pushed these thoughts out of my mind. No need to peer into my inner darkness right now. I continued to scan the forest, attempting to identify every non-vertical surface. I carefully determined if I was seeing a low branch or the back of a forest animal. I didn't see any animals nearby. Despite not detecting movement, my mood continued to sour as I become more and more aware that I have absolutely no idea where I am. Nothing looks right to me. I can't identify a single tree or plant. Red birds, strange ant-like bugs. I look up again, no planes in the sky, no contrails. That doesn't mean much, I suppose. Not every place has large amounts of air traffic, but just more unfamiliarity to add to my worries. I live in a place with a lot of air traffic. You can always see a few planes streaking across the sky. My mind reels as I consider all the information I've gathered up until now. Finally, my mind reaches an irrational conclusion. Did I get Isakai'd? I'm embarrassed at the thought. I don't do irrational, and that was just an irrational thought. I'm a purely logical being. Irrationality and illogical crap is for normal people. My emotions become a jumbled mess of conflicting and irrational thoughts. I quietly mouth the words status. I immediately feel stupid for even considering this. But shockingly, a translucent curved screen did in fact appear before me. It was semi-transparent and curved, similar to the way screens would appear while using a VR headset. Shit, I exclaim with a volume likely unsafe for my current situation. My head swims as I sit back down into the underbrush and place my head in my hands. Thoughts begin to race through my still throbbing brain. I try to calm myself as I take in this reality-breaking information. Well, okay then, I just got frickin' Isakai'd. Crap, I mean seriously, I'm naked in a strange, likely dangerous world. I probably know more about Isakai and manwha than any self-respecting adult should. I actually love the genre and always fantasized about it. I even tried to write a story about it once. My 12-year-old potato of a computer died soon after and I lost all my work. Then another thought bomb forms in the space between my ears and drops. Again, my mind becomes a shattered mess. I wave the screens away even before looking at them, and I start to examine my own body. Either I'm not me, or I'm no adult. I've lost a considerable amount of muscle mass, and where my beer belly should be is a smooth row of defined muscles. My legs and arms are much slimmer than they should be. My scars are gone. One on my hip from a motorcycle accident. Another one on my knee when I fell off a horse onto a gravel driveway. I suppose it may have been a pony. I'm not entirely sure. I was young at the time. I was around 5 years old. Parents didn't take me to the doctors. I recall my mom picking stones out of the wound with tweezers and then later the school nurse looking it over. She was mad and saying how it should have been stitched up. It was a bit healed up at that point. It had begun to bleed during gym, and that's the only reason anyone noticed. That doesn't matter right now. What's important is that the scars are gone. It's as if they never even existed. I must be about the age of a teenager. Based on my past memories, I'm similar to what I would call 15 or 16. I've lost between 50 and 70 pounds. Hard to judge, it was a rather big belly. As a grown adult, I was the smallest man in my family, but I was still a giant compared to most. If I follow the same growth patterns I did originally, then I should be about 240 in 5 years. I was a hard worker and in perfect physical condition due to my stint in the service. The belly didn't show up till after years of drinking. I actually had 2 terms of service even though one was cut short. I joined the reserves when I was 16. They let me sign up. It was one of the examples my counselor used to show me that I was a little special. My ASFOB score was a 97%. A stealth IQ test he called it. And I was in the top 3% of everyone that had ever taken the ASFOB. But okay, this information isn't going to help me right now. I give my surroundings a quick once-over before I bring the status screens back into view. Male, dimensional traveler, human, age 16, strength 9, agility 8, constitution 7, intellect 13, wisdom 5, charisma 4. Class, monk, current level 0, experience till next level 20, key 48 of 48. Current life skills, language common, literacy common basic level 4, jewelry crafting level 4. Martial skills, basic hand-to-hand level 3. Racial traits, adaptation from human, energy manipulation from dimensional traveler. Magical affinity, light and darkness. Personal magic, unknown. Well, let's figure this all out. I spent 20 years as a goldsmith. So there's that. In intelligence of 13, that's my highest stat. I can't discern any difference with my intelligence right now. I still feel like me, I have all my knowledge and memories. Sometimes in Isakai novels the protagonists have their memories wiped. In the novels that they don't, they tend to have a distinct advantage. Using former knowledge to amass wealth by introducing novel ideas or technology into an otherwise technology-stunted medieval-like world. It's still too early to determine what this world is like. But okay then, I'm at a 13, then I assume it is a higher than average stat. Now hey, I know better than to just go around boasting about how smart I am. That never goes over well with others. People are always believing themselves to somehow be above me, and if you ever question or suggest it, well then. People seem to react very poorly to this. But for reasons I can't possibly understand, they seem to think it's just fine when they do this. Just one of the millions of small social things I can't bend my head around or rationalize in any way. My charisma is 4, so then based on what I know about myself, I'm going to guess that's begrudgingly accurate. It is what it is. I'm not a social person, so I just deal with it and move on. I'm guessing then average stats are 10s. My charisma and wisdom scores are complete shit. So then a 9 strength is damn good. I have 6 or 7 more years of growing. I won't get much taller, but I'll fill out and bulk up. I go ahead and try out some more common Isakai staple stuff. Having spent so much time reading and watching novels and videos on the subject, I may as well consider this an advantage. I quietly say, map, but nothing happens. So then I try spells. A menu did open but was labeled as key abilities instead. Right, okay then. I'm a monk. Being a monk definitely sucks ass. I would never have chosen this class. No one ever willingly plays a monk class in the RPGs I enjoyed during my former life. My former life, I think to myself, I'm too accepting and comfortable with all this. Monks are based on wisdom and my wisdom is low. I always prefer play mages or mage hybrids with rogue and warriors. Being a monk just seems to be a huge negative. I hope this isn't some sort of cultivation system. I truly dislike those kinds of novels. To many intricate rules related to a culture I'm unfamiliar with. I run my hands over my hair hoping to God that I don't have a frock. Well, there's a blessing, at least I'm not like an Eastern monk. That would be terrible. My hair is fine. So then Western monk, not an Eastern monk. Hopefully. Personal magic, the stats window instantly flips to it. I'm getting accustomed to navigating the system already. I wonder if this is a world where everyone is born with some sort of magical ability. Abilities which are unique only to them or their families. There is another tab here listed as key abilities. I focus on it and a new window appears with the heading, Key Abilities. Below it the following words appear. Create Key Level 0, Shadow Strike Level 0, Prismatic Burst Level 0, Shroud of Shadows Level 0, and the last one is Summon Key Level 0. I wonder what the difference between create key and summon key are. I noticed that my head feels better now. This headache is all but gone. I've been sitting in these plants far too long, and these plants are irritating my naked muscular butt. I stand back up slowly, willing all the screens closed. I need a club or some such simple weapon. Don't need to go getting myself killed on day one by some sort minor beast. I could also make a staff or spear, but to do that I will need to make some sort of cutting tools. If I find a creek bed or rocky outcropping, I can make them. I think about my key abilities and how I might get them to activate. I can study them more later, but for right now I need to explore my surroundings. I need to find a source of water and before dark build a shelter. These should be my immediate priorities. Well, after finding a club, then after that I'll start solving the other problems. I also need to figure out these key abilities. I need to figure out what they do and how they work. My survival will likely depend heavily on them. Before I get myself into trouble, I should know how to use at least one of them. I look down at my feet. My soft, tender, naked feet. That's another problem to solve. It's a rather big problem. Having worn shoes my entire life has made my feet soft and vulnerable. Not wearing shoes will make my feet hard and callous, which isn't a bad thing. I then look at my hands. No scars and no calluses. This body is possibly new. Bodies are always remade in the novels, something about not being able to bring physical objects into the new dimension. I guess that excludes being summoned. That happens too, and then you get to keep all your stuff. I need to focus on my problems. Simple footwear is a solution, not just my preference. I can make sandals in a few days, but calluses will take weeks or months. I can make twine lashings and perhaps some plants similar to bamboo can be made into a footwear. Not entirely sure how to even make footwear, but I will come up with something. I always do. I've lived my life just making it up as I go. I'm a master at making something from nothing. Creating tools from whatever is close at hand. It doesn't have to look nice, just needs to be something functional. I approached one of the many dead and charred trees in the clearing. Despite having patches of black charred surface, it was also weathered and covered with holes made by insects. I leaped up to a low-hanging branch, grasping it firmly, letting my body hang down from it. I thrust my body mass up and down repeatedly till the wood started making cracking noises and then finally sheared off under my weight. It was about a yard long and having broken off the main trunk with a large meaty knot at the end. Functional enough, not that impressive to look at. It will do for now, but I'll keep my eyes out for an upgrade. Looking at the sun, or rather estimating where it should be through the partially overcast skies. It's still shy of midday. Clouds look normal, at least there's that. Since I've woken up, I've been in this clearing about an hour. Direction is more or less irrelevant since I am currently no place and I have no idea where some place is. I won't need to come back here to this clearing, so well then fuck it. I fling my new club up into the air and watched it plop down into the grass. This mighty club says I should go that way. If this club turns out to be a bad stick, I will likely burn you before the morning. Parody of a line from a movie. Well, I'm no Dread Pirate Roberts. I'm a monk and I should have a cool name. And just like that, my journey to no place specific has begun. I walked for about 2 hours. I saw a yellow-colored creature that looked similar to a deer. It was about half as big as a deer. Well, half the size of a normal deer I'd expect to see in New York. It's more like a Kentucky-sized deer. They're much smaller. One of the guys from my platoon was bragging on the deer he hunted and showed me a picture. My first thought was, why did you even bother to shoot it? But I later learned that in Kentucky it was actually an okay-sized one. He said it was 65 pounds. When I was a kid, we had an obese Doberman that was 65 pounds. That deer was a shameful size. I traveled through an area that was swampy but dry. If it had rained any time recently, this area would likely have a few inches of water, but for now it was just black sticky muck. I saw some basketball-sized light blue blobs every now and again. I wondered if they were slime monsters. Personally, I would have expected them to bounce around joyfully with a cute little face. These looked like peeled grapes. I'll avoid them for now. A good starting creature in all the novels. Perhaps I could return and explore this area more thoroughly. But the thought of trekking through that black muck barefooted made me feel uneasy. One small cut on my feet and who knows what horrific infections would come from it. I won't come back till after I have made some form of footwear. So then I continued walking late into the afternoon. I came across a fallen tree with a large V in its upper branches. This is 3 sides of a shelter. It's good, and I won't find an easier place to set up camp. I have some reading and experimenting to do before dark. I'll forego a fire tonight. I doubt the temperature will be too uncomfortable. It may also attract unwanted attention rather than keep it away. The day was long, perhaps more hours in a day than what I'm used to. It's kind of difficult to tell. It's not like I can check the time on my phone. It just felt too long. I will need more time to figure it out. I quickly gathered up some branches and put them along the separation in the tree's trunk. Then I piled on a bunch of leaves and grass. Next I crawled in and started removing the topsoil from my shelter, deepening the floor and piling the dirt up top of the structure. I also dug a shallow channel out from the shelter. If it rains hard, I don't need to sleep in a kiddie pool. Shelter from the wind, shelter from passing eyes, and so long as it doesn't rain hard, it's shelter from the weather. Next I will need something to keep me off the ground. I tried to scoop up as many dried leaves as I could, all while avoiding the more moist ones closer to the ground. Don't need too many insects crawling over me. Not that I have much choice. No mosquitoes yet. At least there's that. It's impossible to fall asleep with the mosquitoes buzzing in your ears all night. I take a seat down in my shelter and opened up the system, focusing on the key abilities menu. Having become more familiar with using the system, I go right to focusing on the first ability. Create Key Level 0. Create Key is a meditative key restorative technique. While in this meditative trance, one can explore the nature of their soul. Okay, I experimented with meditation when I was younger. It wasn't for me, not much more to say about that. It just simply wasn't my thing. Next is Shadow Strike Level 0. This one looks promising. Shadow Strike, by concentrating, one can surround and solidify shadow on their hands or weapons. The description is lacking. I almost feel like I already understand the mechanics of this ability. Perhaps by nature one instinctively knows and understands how to use their own skills and abilities. I sit while staring at my hands. I picture my hands a deep black while I concentrate on forming shadows around them. Nothing happens, so after a few more failed attempts I search memories of novel and webtoons related to the subject. So I'm supposed to have either a martial or mana core. The core is either behind the solar plexus or the heart. One is for clerics and caster classes, the other is for warriors and martial artists. I'm supposed to somehow circulate energies. It can be called mana or ki. Regardless, I'm supposed to circulate this energy and extend it or focus it where I need it. There are places called meridians. I don't know what those are. I think they might also be called chakras. But not the Xena warrior thing. I think that's also called the same thing. I'm not entirely sure, and I can't look it up and verify it in any way. I close my eyes and go back to mentally feeling around my inner space. Nothing interesting happens for a long time, but then I start to sense something. It's like the edges of a ball of rolling water. I focus on this feeling and it eventually seems more tangible. I feel as if it's more like a bowling ball size. It feels too big to actually fit within my body. It's more of a churning rather than a smooth flowing sensation. I focus on the churning and it eventually starts to feel more uniformed and evened out. Over time the ball's size seems to reduce down to that of a grapefruit or softball, until finally I sense energy starting to radiate outward. This is difficult and mentally taxing. I open my eyes after I lose focus. My skin is clammy, I smell sweat as I breathe rapidly trying to catch my breath. The light of day is now barely visible. I can't be sure, but it appears as if I have been sitting here an hour, maybe two. But my best guess, it felt like 20 or 30 minutes. This must be the meditation described in the first skill, Key Creation. I can still vaguely feel the ball of force in my chest. I seem to have done something or improved in some way. I'll have to try again. I stopped before this energy extended for more than a few inches. I go back to the system and continue reading the descriptions. For Prismatic Burst it says, Prismatic Burst charges up an explosive force that will knock back your enemies. Again with the underwhelming descriptions. It's some kind of crowd control skill. Pushes everyone away. That would work well with a spear. Next is Shroud of Shadows Level 0. A cool name. The skill reads, a skill that allows you to take a short sprint while shrouded in shadow. Oh, that's another neat one. Movement skills are always good. Every class should have at least one of these. Okay, now the last one, Summon Key. Summon Key is a lesser aura skill that allows you to add destructive force to your attacks or form a protective barrier to shield yourself from harm. I think it's a hardening type skill. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm naked. Any form of defense is a big improvement. This one seems versatile and has a lot of utility. I can use it both as a damage boost or a defense. Light and dark, offense and defense, yin and yang. I feel like there is a pattern forming here. This one seems as if it will become my main skill. Mastering this one skill should be a priority. I need to work on Create Key to get my skills to work, but once that is done, Summon Key is the skill I want to focus on the most. Aside from that, I get the feeling that Create Key and Prismatic Burst are light-based skills and the rest are shadow skills. We're continuing a pattern here. My affinities seem to be working flawlessly into my class. I wonder if my class is monk because of this. I would still rather be a mage or caster class. My feelings on monk are a little better, maybe it's a bit exciting. But knowledge is power and intellect is my best stat. But as cool as mage seems, I was never the academic type. I never studied or turned in homework as a kid. Didn't feel I needed to. The teachers would complain and I'd just remind them of my test scores. I'm terrible at being smart. Lazy, never applied myself. Always just did the bare minimum. Perhaps mage would be a poor choice. Maybe I would just have ended up as a half-assed mage. But let's be clear about this. At that age, my priority was survival. I've always had a job. I can't even remember how young I was when the responsibility of buying food was my burden. I'm starting to touch the darkness within. I need to stop it. I was in counseling for half my life, but I still can't peer into the darkness. I take a deep breath, clear my mind, and continue focusing on the sphere of force that's inside me. This time I imagine it was a ball of light and soon I can feel it begin to radiate outward. In my mind's eye, the light illuminates my body as I feel it radiating toward my head, feet, and hands. Day 2, I awake naked in a damp, foggy forest. I woke before sunrise to the sound of yips and yelps echoing through the forest. It's not yet dawn, but feels like dawn should arrive shortly. The noises were distant and moving fast through the woods. Hunting creatures of some sort heading their prey in a direction that seems to be adjacent to my camp. After a time, the noise becomes noticeably more distant and I determine it's headed the same direction I've been traveling. I couldn't determine much other than that. The creatures could be a type of canine-like creature, a smaller creature more like a fox and less wolf-sized, but could just as easily be some other sort of animal performing some normal activity that I have yet to understand. I peered out of my dwelling into the forest with my club clenched tightly in my hands. I'm on high alert and ready myself for whatever and stand guard till dawn. It seems like 45 minutes or so. There was a slight mist hanging in the cool forest air. My shelter was a success, did everything it was supposed to do. In late morning, I ventured out of my shelter and peered toward the direction where I heard the yelling earlier. Now I don't have tracking on my skill list, but having grown up as a wild child, I knew a thing or two. I opened my system menus and examined the Create Key skill. It's now at a level 1. Reaching this level isn't too difficult and must represent the very basic lowest level of competency. While I was meditating last night, I thought I could hear water towards the end. Right before I fell asleep. Glancing back at my shelter one last time, I journeyed onward, not certain if I would come back to it or not. I did, however, find water shortly after. I stood atop a deep canyon with steep sloping cliffs. Rocks peered and jutted out from various places along the slope that lead down to what looked like a string of shallow water pools. Between the pools were small waterfalls, which is what I must have heard in the night. And whatever those things moving through the woods were could have been chasing an unknown prey over the cliff edge to its death. Tracking skills. You can climb down there, but you would also leave a churned-up path with your feet, making it very obvious if anything or anyone had gone down and then back up. I moved along the canyon slowly, frequently peering down into its depths, but found nothing of interest. I walked along the canyon edge for about 2 hours in a slightly uphill direction. The canyon became progressively shallower and turned into nothing more than a stream in the bottom of a ditch. I climbed down the small embankment and splashed my bare feet into the shallow water. It was cold and fresh. I took my chances and drank my fill, knowing I could regret it if there was anything that could make me sick. I could build a fire by rubbing sticks together, but shit, that can take a long time if you don't have everything you need. Better to put down roots in a good location and then keep the hot coals going rather than start a new fire every day. And before I get into the habit of boiling my water, I should at least find or make some clay. For now, I can look around for some stones that I can make cutting tools from. If I get lucky, I might even be able to start work on a spear. I slowly walked up the stream, stepping carefully and observing the small minnows and occasional crustaceans that plodded along the bottom. I could probably eat them, but I would likely extinct the whole lot of them just to make one meal, as they are quite small. And as far as the fish, well, nothing over an inch long. I decided to climb up the other side of the ravine and change direction back downstream. Hopefully other small streams will come together and larger fish can be found. And then I might be able to find a small farming community down at a lake at the bottom of a valley. I have been going slightly uphill for an hour or two, but my chances are better following the water downstream. I found some stone that I could fashion into a cutting edge. I climbed up to the top of the ravine once again and took a good look at my surrounding before I started striking the stones together to break off a shallow sliver of stone. The thin sliver has a sharp serrated edge on it. The edge won't last long, but I can always make another. A simple tool with a simple function. I then took the sharpened stone sliver and placed it along the top of the bulbous end of the club. Using the same stone I used to create it, I then pounded down into the club's end. Now I have only one tool to carry. This stone at the top does nothing to improve it any. I considered making a row of similar stones along the club to create a get-toe stone sword. But for now I'm happy with this. I am happy not to have to carry two things around with me. Considering how I'm often forgetful and absent-minded, affixing the stone-cutting tool like this makes it so I don't have to constantly search for it every time I set it down. I start walking back the other direction. The ground here is more compact, almost as if it were a walking path with small sharp stones jutting out everywhere. It likely is an animal path of some sort. I need to make some footwear soon. My walking speed is much slower as I am careful not to step onto sharp twigs or rocks that can hurt my tender, unprotected feet. I did at some point manage to cut my foot right between the toes. I need to be more careful as I have no idea what type of infections I can get. Although confident that my healthy body can fight off most of the unknown threats, it only takes one mistake to learn a hard lesson. I walked for half the day, my journey turning into more of a steep, downhill trek. Through the trees I can now see out of the forest toward another forested hill in the distance. I am in fact walking down into a valley. My journey must have started along the peak of some gently rolling hill. And now that I think of it, the forest clearing from earlier, the one with the burned trees, was likely due to a lightning strike. The information consider further suggests I was in fact along the skyline of a hill. This area is in some ways similar to where I grew up. Ignoring the slight discoloration of all the leaves, I do feel a comforting and deep connection to nature here. I slow down my walking as I approach the edge of a sheer cliff. Water spill from the canyon to my left as it then descended hundreds of feet down into the treetops below me. I paused here for a long while, partly to soak in the view, partly to study the area. This is the first time that I've been able to see the surrounding area. My eyes scan back and forth along the canopy below. I'm looking for anything that could be considered a hazard or danger. At this distance I couldn't be sure, but it looked almost like some of the trees were covered in a white reflective fuzzy or fabric-like material. Could this be some sort of webbing? I then instinctively turned and scanned the treetops above and nearby me. Damn, those are some big webs. I need to be more conscious of my surroundings. I could have easily walked under several such areas and been completely oblivious to any dangers. Maybe I already have. I changed the direction of my path so that I now walked along the cliff's edge. There was an even more well-trodden path here. Definitely an animal path. Every so often I can see what look like the paw prints of something the size of a fox. It's difficult to tell, but the walking pattern is different. Almost like they're walking on two legs. It's an odd thought, so I disregard it. I'll assume I'm just simply not a skilled enough tracker. This cliff is such a long way down. It's likely I will need to walk quite a distance before I locate any reasonably safe way to descend. I continued on this path as I crossed two more smaller streams. The first was nothing but a trickle and the second was ankle deep. Having been alerted to possible dangers in the treetops, I looked up more often and was much more alert and careful when approaching the shallow streams. At the crossing of the second stream, I did in fact spot some webbing. There were several small branches dangling from long rope-like webs that disappeared into the canopy above. I need 20 experience to reach level 1. I've gone an entire day without food, and the thought of fighting something that could poison or sicken me is an unnecessary risk. You can make some low-grade topicals from charcoal and certain plants, but I don't have anything like that with me. Furthermore, I don't see any spiders, but the webs I saw at the bottom of the cliff encompassed a large area. The thought of spiders that I imagined could be the size of cats was terrifying, but so too is the thought of hundreds of small spiders falling down like rain. I had considered watching the area a while and seeing if anything falls into the spider's trap, but there are just too many unknowns here to risk it. I backed out of the area and then started heading back uphill to safely circumvent the area. I had only walked about 2 minutes when, sensing danger, I stopped dead in my tracks. I knelt down and quickly moved to the base of a nearby tree. Off in the distance I could hear low yipping and yelping similar to that of earlier in the morning. I waited a few minutes when two figures emerged from the forest heading toward me. I considered my options. I have a canyon on my right, albeit quite a distance off, a giant cliff behind me, and spiders to my left. They haven't spotted me, but I think they're heading toward the spiders. Maybe they're intentionally hunting them. As the two figures draw near, I can see they are covered in light gray fur. They have dog-like facial features, and both are carrying spears twice their own height. The spears are almost 7 feet long and tipped with something that doesn't look like stone or wood. It could be metal, but more of a glassy material. On further examination, one also seems to have what looks like a wicker basket strapped to its back. I slowly draw back behind the tree and circle around to the other side of the trunk as the two creatures pass close by. If these creatures have keen sense of smell, they won't smell me just yet. The wind is blowing toward the cliff behind me for the moment, but that means I could be detected at any moment. What if they're not hostile and I attack them? They appear somewhat sentient creatures. Would attacking them be murder? What if this whole world is populated just with creatures such as these, and I present myself as a monster that hunts them in the woods? Maybe I'm just overthinking everything. Letting them approach me with those long spears is problematic. If they attack me, I will of course defend myself, but I would have to get under the spear and close the distance. Being that there are two, the problem is more than compounded. I have prismatic burst, that would be ideal, but learning how to use a new skill during a life or death situation is not a smart thing to do. Damn, I'm wimping out on every chance for experience here. I'm feeling more of a side character rather than the protagonist of this Isakai. I hold my breath and wait. The two creatures pass by uneventfully. Perhaps the wind is blowing just slight off to the side and they won't smell me at all, or maybe they already have but just don't care. I cautiously wait to see how things develop. After a time, I slowly follow behind. I dart from tree to tree trying to activate the Shroud of Shadow skill. The creatures head to where the cliff and the stream connect. I remain hidden as I watch from what I consider a safe distance. The two creatures, or heck, let's just call them gnolls. They fit the description, and if they're not gnolls, maybe I survive long enough to learn about them later. From my hiding spot, I can see the gnolls slowly approach the area by the stream. One extends his spear and taps the rope like web lightly. The other one sets down the wicker basket and then takes up position next to the other spear at the ready. Every 20 or 30 seconds, the gnoll reaches up and taps the web again. This goes on for several minutes with nothing happening. Then the gnolls walk over to a different web dangling from the canopy and start tapping at that one. Soon a large bulbous green spider the size of a large dog descends into view from the treetops with its legs splayed out in all directions. The gnolls start yipping and yelping as they jump back and forth, keeping an eye on the descending spider. Then the spider drops to the ground from about 10 feet in the air and the gnolls jump back and viciously jab their spears at it. The gnolls apparently have done this before as they quickly kill the spider with little to no effort or danger to themselves. Then they both set down their spears and grab the spider's long legs, and I kid you not, start playing tug-of-war with the spider till one rips the leg off and falls back, landing on his ass. The gnoll then folds the leg up and stuffs it into the wicker basket. Then they go right back to the tug-of-war, ripping the legs off the spider one by one till only one leg is left. The gnoll who had the last attached leg then starts leaping around, yipping and hollering as his associate gnoll glares at him defeated. Finally they twist and pull the last leg free. Fold it up, and then stuff it into the bag with the rest. The gnoll who appears the winner in the game hoists up the basket as the defeated one straps it onto its back, and then with spears in hand they return back the direction that they arrived from. I sit back down, leaning with my back against the tree, and wait for the two to disappear back into the woods. Well, now that was interesting. I decide to wait a while before going in and trying to get a spider kill myself. When I feel confident that the coast is clear, I leave my hiding spot and approach the corpse of the dead spider. Apparently the legs are the only part they were interested in, as they left the rest of it here to rot. I run my hand along the spider's thorax, feeling the hardness of its carapace. Then I check out the spider's eyes and notice the fangs were gone. At some point the gnolls pull out the fangs. That's what their spears were tipped with. Spider fang spears. I should be able to make a simple spear like this. And the carapace could be made into something too. It's hard and obviously pierce resistant, but also has some flexibility. With club in hand, I again look up into the trees looking for another dangle. I cross the stream and approach one of the last two remaining dangles. These two are close to each other. I hope I don't get more than one spider. I tap it cautiously and quickly retreat, keeping my eyes above me and scanning all around. Nothing happens and I once again creep closer and give the tendril a light tap just as I had observed the gnolls doing. A leafy twig falls down next to me and I quickly retreat again, scanning the treetops, readying the club. I know that something is up there moving around, but nothing has appeared yet. So okay, no risk, no reward, but come on, these things are the size of Rottweilers. I totally decide to puss out and leave this dangerous behavior to the gnolls, but then as I turn around to leave, a damn spider is sneaking up behind me. I jump back and raise my club as it hisses and lunges forward. Its quick lunge was more than twice the distance that I jumped back. What should have been a solid home run swing upside the spider's head was more like a toddler with a wiffle ball bat, swinging and failing miserably. Shit, this time I move clockwise in little sprinting jumps, hoping that this thing has a slow turn radius. But instead of turning, it lifts two of its legs into the air and takes a side swipe. Now, I should probably have noticed this earlier, but the ends of this spider's legs look like sickle-shaped blades with the sharp edge on the inside curve leading up to a vicious point. Although I blocked both with my club, the lower one caught me in the forearm, cutting me to the bone. My first thought was to pin it down so it couldn't take another swipe. I did this by leaping forward and slamming down with my foot on its back. I then grabbed the two legs it just swung at me and pulled hard while putting all my weight down with my foot. The two legs came free with much less force than one would have expected, and I stumbled several steps back before regaining my balance and tossing the two now writhing legs to the ground. Then the spider turned to face me and I darted back around to the side of the spider. I made a few quick jumps forward and back, trying to get the spider to take another swipe, but seems it can't do that while trying to turn with two missing legs. So I jumped in again and swung my club as hard as I could into the area just behind the eyes. Sure, it would have been better to club it in the eyes, but I just didn't have the reach from the flank. And there's no way I'm getting in front of this fanged Ginsu. I keep creeping to the left as it turns to face me, and I begin raining down blows like my life depended on it. With each swing of the club, blood from my cut runs down my arm and flies into the air around me. Then I see another spider over by the corpse of the one killed by the gnolls. Okay then, so I get it now, these things are fanged cannibal Ginsu blenders. They didn't climb down when I tapped the rope, they must be more interested in the spider corpse. That's how the bastard got down behind me. I'm failing this Isakai in a big way. Just then I hear a ding sound in my head. Not a ding like a bell, but like the ding you hear in the EverQuest game. Ding. I felt as if some energy flowed into me. I feel empowered and refreshed. Damn, all this Isakai crap is messed up. I stop swinging the club and my eyes search for the other spider by the corpse. Ooh, fantastic, now there's two. I reach down and grab my spider corpse and heave it up next to my chest while still holding my club. I look over to the two legs and decide to abandon them. With a giant green spider corpse in my arms, I turn and run like a scared little girl. I don't think I screamed as I blitzed out of there, but I don't know, maybe I did a little. This thing has to be about 50 pounds, and I keep looking back to see if I'm being chased. But there's nothing following me. I run for about 2 full minutes, paranoid as fuck that there's going to be an army of giant Ginsu blender murder bugs behind me. I stop running and turn several times, looking and listening. It's at this moment that I notice the cut on my arm is healed. This must have happened when I leveled up. As strange as this seems, it must be some normal aspect of this world's leveling system. I think I'm safe and quickly disassemble my corpse. First by removing the 6 legs, followed by removing the 7-inch fangs. The fangs pull free easily as if they are like a bee's stinger. They are made to come free after being lodged into some animal. A small sac is attached to the back of the fang and yellow fluid starts dripping from them. This is probably an acid or poison. The fangs pull free too easily. It's more like a bee stinger. I assume that after a time their fangs will grow back and whatever they kill is shared by all the other spiders in the nest. A social mob, they work together as a group. Also, the spider looses its fang, but it has an attached sac, so the juices continue injecting into its victim. A digestive enzyme perhaps, the fangs dislodge because it takes a long time for the enzymes to prepare the corpse for eating. Regardless of how these spiders function, I need to be careful not to get this fluid on my skin. I drop them both down next to the pile of legs. Next comes the hard part. I use the sharp stone fragment to cut the carapace on the thorax. This doesn't go easily. The leathery-like carapace doesn't cut well at all. I stop several times and search my surroundings. This includes the area above my head. I can actually see the sky here through the treetops, so that's at least one thing less to worry about. Once the cut along the carapace is done, I start pulling and peeling it off the spider. With effort, a strip pulls free. Looking at the carapace piece questioningly, I roll the spider onto its back and notice there is a crease across the bottom. If I ever need to do this again, I should make my cut there. The way I did it just made smaller pieces, but this is going to be good enough. So after about 10 minutes, I have 6 legs, 2 fangs, and 12 carapace pieces of various sizes. Should have been 6 larger pieces, but live and learn. I then examine the legs closer. I can see the tops of the legs, or rather the base of the leg, seems to have some meat. I can cook this right in the shell and pull it out later. The ends of the legs have no meat but are long, thin sickle-like blades that tapered into a knob-like joint. There isn't enough grip for hands my size on the 5 back legs, but for smaller hands like the Knowles, this would be a ready-made dagger. One of the legs, the one remaining front leg, is larger than the others. The sharp blade-like area is close to 10 inches. This is the one I will make a dagger out of for myself. For me, I'll have to alter it by removing some of the sharper parts and then put a hand wrap on it, or remove the joint and make a handle somehow. The middle section of the legs are neither sharp or meaty. Nothing comes to my mind while considering what I can make out of them. I break off the 6 back sections, then remove the blade from the front leg. I'll abandon the 5 smaller leg ends. So then I have 12 carapace sections, 6 meaty sections, and a 10-inch leg blade. I also have the 2 spire fangs. After taking time to survey my surroundings for danger, I toss the remaining husk over the edge of the cliff and watch it disappear far below me. Ooh, monster cores? In the novels, many of the creatures have monster cores. Next time I'll have to search for one. I scoop up all my loot and quickly leave this area. I walk for another 2 hours before seeing a way down into the valley below. I passed another shallow stream about 5 minutes ago, making sure there were no spiders in that area before drinking my fill of water. I will head back there and find a place to make camp. I have crafting to do and I need to cook some food. After searching the area for about an hour, I found an area with some large flat boulders. I dig a hole and make what's called a Montana fire pit or a smokeless fire pit. It's deep in the ground with its own separate inlet for air. This gets good air circulation and burns hot. Once your fire gets hot enough, there won't be much smoke. Also, being set down into a deep hole, the light only project upward. If done properly, you could walk past within 15 or 20 feet of the fire but not notice it. A great way to hide from Indians out on the Montana prairie. Next, I gather up small twigs and kindling into a pile next to the fire pit. I set about making extremely fine shavings with my new spider knife. Now the hard part. Starting a fire by rubbing sticks together. I've done this a few times and it usually takes me more than an hour. If I'm successful, my arms are likely to be exhausted. Boy Scouts may pride themselves on lighting a fire using a single match, but they still need a match. This is the caveman way to light fires. Sure, there are better methods like the bow and spindle method, but I have no string to make the bow with. I can make cordage by hand, but I need specific types of plant material, and those are more the sort of things you find in fields or around the edges of wide streams. So we're doing this caveman style. First, I selected 2 sticks that fit the needs of fire starting. With the spider blade, I whittled one stick with a wedge shape and the other I needed to carved a V-shaped channel along the length of the stick. Next, I carved out a small bowl shape at the end of the channel. I then secured the longer stick against a rock with the bowl shape at the top slightly higher than the bottom of the stick. Next, I placed the finely shaved bark and wood into the depression at the top. With a deep breath and a sigh, I began the friction. With pressure, I moved the stick up and down in the channel. The chaff would slide down the channel and then I would push it back up into the depression. Within a minute, a small tendril of smoke began to rise up into the air. This is nothing to get excited about. It's rather easy to get the sticks to start smoking, but you have to keep this up until both sticks heat up. Then once everything becomes hot, you can start to ignite the chaff. I continued this for about 45 minutes ET. Everything is nice and hot. My arms were protesting with exhaustion after the enduring efforts. Sweat rolled down my forehead and back, but I continued knowing that taking any breaks would just result in having to start the process again from the beginning. The stick in my hand is actually the one being lit. As the tip starts to combust, it will break off, leaving a hot coal. That tiny coal is what we want. It's what we use to light the chaff. This finally happened around the 50-minute mark. A small hot red ember appeared in the channel. I pushed the little ember up into the chaff, then cupped the stick in my hands, blowing lightly till a small flame appeared. I'm almost done. This is an easy part to screw up. I take my time to carefully encourage the tiny flame to grow. Little by little I finally have an inch-tall flame. Then I carefully place the flame down into the fire pit. I sprinkled the smallest twigs on first. Quickly the tiny flame grows into a flame several inches larger, and I had kindling on top about the thickness of my fingers. At this point I knew that I had succeeded. The flame is stable and a bed of hot coals began to form in layers on the bottom. I laid all 6 of the spider legs across the hole while I began to cook them slowly. As the legs were cooking, I propped myself up against the large flat rock that I was using as a wind barrier and opened my status window. It looked almost the same as before with a few small changes. Class, Monk, current level 1, experience till next level 35, key 54 of 54, unallocated stat points, 1. Okay, what am I seeing now? In video games you would have endurance and mana listed. I just have key. I play around with numbers and don't get any sense of how to generate the value of 54. It's 8 points more than last level. That may be Constitution 6 and Intellect 13 added together for 19, then divided by 2. That's 8.5 rounded down, leaving me with 8 additional points of key. Of course, this is purely a guess. I won't know for sure until after I add a point to one of the 2 stats. I should take some time to see if I can figure out another skill. I've managed to get create key to level 1. So now I need another skill to level up. I didn't get any skill points, so that is rather disappointing and unhelpful. I do however have 1 stat point. Again, that's underwhelming. Stat progression is going to be slow. Assuming that 10 is the base for an average adult, I would need 18 levels to bring all my stats to a 10. Being young may allow me to also raise stats through exercise and study. My wisdom stat is a 5. How do you study wisdom? Is it related to life experiences? Should it raise slowly on its own as I grow older? I already have the life experiences of an old man. So what's the system trying to tell me here? Ah, screw you system. Charisma of 4, that's another shit stat. Charisma of 4. I'm not a people person. I have no sense of tact and I don't make friends easily. This is another stat whose method of increase is unknown to me. I check on the spider legs. The cooking process has barely started. Then I started to feel sprinkles of rain. Nice, what luck I have today. I have these large boulders to block the wind and prevent light from my fire to project into the forest, but I have no overhead shelter. I get up and start darting to and fro, grabbing as much ground wood as I can find nearby. I have plenty of time before dark, but if the rain picks up, I'm going to be cold and wet. For the next hour, I began working on overhead coverage for my little campsite. I started by placing a long log between 2 of the large flat boulders and then lining up smaller sticks make the roof in a similar manner to the previous shelter from the night before. I did this for about an hour, taking time to add small twigs to the fire and reposition the spider legs to cook them evenly. In this time the rain picked up to a light drizzle. Not enough rain to soak me, but enough to feel the chill of the late afternoon breeze. The spider legs appear to be done cooking, so I took them off the fire and would eat them after the lean-to's roof was completed. This didn't take long. I started with a layer of leaves and, like before, I added dirt on top of that and patted it down. Luckily the dirt here contained a considerable amount of clay. Not as much as you would get from the soil in a pine forest, but much more than the dirt from the previous day's shelter. I grabbed my club and knife and headed over to the shallow stream nearby to clean off. On the way back, I cut down a sapling tree that would be the bulk of my spear. I still needed the right types of plants to get fibers from to make the cordage. And it would also be useful to get some good pitch. Usually you need pine trees to make pitch, however, I have not seen anything similar yet. As I walked back to camp, I used my spider knife to cut open a few trees. If I'm lucky, they will produce a thick sap and I will check them again in the morning. When I returned to my campsite, I sat down under the shelter. Then I put the spider legs back on the fire to warm them up as I began whittling the bark off my spear stave. I have several projects started now and each of them are in need of cordage. Water check, shelter check, food check, fire check. Main priority is now cordage. With that I'll be able to make footwear and work on making a spear, and I will have 8 more pieces of spider leather to start making clothing. The shelter I built was just tall enough to allow me to sit comfortable while I eat and work. Time passed and the sun began to go down. I sat for a few hours nibbling on my spider legs while I mentally crafted and recrafted my footwear in my head. Each of the spider legs needed to be cracked open the same way you eat crab legs. The meat had a taste and texture similar to that of chicken. Of course it tastes like chicken. Isn't everything supposed to taste like chicken? If only I had a nice tall ice-cold beer, then I would be all set. With the spear stave clean and smooth, I placed the end over the fire to harden it. I opened up the system and poked around before deciding to work on Summon Key. Summon Key is a lesser aura skill that allows you to add destructive force to your attacks or form a protective barrier to shield yourself from harm. I'll start with the protective barrier. I mentally try many things, with each attempt I feel as if something is starting to word. Then as I clench my fists and teeth, I feel the skill trigger. It's a feeling of pressure all round me and a darkness solidifies into existence for a brief second and then with a loud crack noise it vanishes. I quickly check the stats page, key 46 of 56. That was 10 points of key for half a second of shielding. I decide to further experiment. A few tries later it triggers again. A distinctive cracking sound and it's gone. Key 36 of 56. Again 10 points. I tried to hold the barrier longer this time, but the skill just flashes in and out of existence. It made a noise like in old martial arts movies where every punch and block results in fight noises. My previous thoughts were that Summon Key would be my main skill seems to be wrong. I exit my shelter and throw some more wood into the fire. I then start practicing punches till my mind gets more focused. I thrust my fist forward into the air and black flame-like shadow appears around my fist and vanishes into a forward arc with a much louder crack sound. Key 26 of 56. I consider exhausting my key just to see what happens. I'm already feeling the strain. My muscles are burning. It's as if I've just done 100 push-ups. This time I'll try kicks. I'm not really someone who would throw a kick during a fight, but I'm a monk class now. I assume it's going to be a big part of being a monk. I practice about 10 kicks before trying to trigger the skill. With a loud bang that echoes all throughout the woods, the skill triggered and large sickle-shaped black flame appeared and extended into the air past my foot. Damn, that's a finishing move. It's kind of like that guy in the Street Fighter game. I think his name was Guile. Not a bad name. I might use it for myself if I ever find a town. My knees are all wobbly this time. I'm much weaker. I'm definitely feeling the exertion this time. The skill effect was also much larger, and the sound it produced was much louder. Key 16 of 56. I no longer feel like experimenting with key anymore. I've already have a good understanding of the skill. It's not a constant use skill, it's for big damage and saving my ass. It will take precision timing, or it's just a waste of key. I wonder if I can get the skill cost down somehow. Its cost seems a bit expensive and I can currently only use it 5 times in a single fight. This works if I'm trying to defeat a single opponent stronger than me, but in a fight with multiple opponents it's not cost efficient. This bringing my key to a 16, running out of key would just leave me physically spent, weak and helpless. Maybe even too exhausted to stand or walk. Spending all my key during a fight is a terribly bad idea. I crawl back into my shelter and begin meditating with the create key skill to replace my strength before continuing my experimentation. But I fell asleep instead. The night was long and I woke several times shivering from being wet. The roof to the shelter wasn't perfect and drips of cold water would occasionally drop down onto me. I would stoke the fire each time I woke up and then attempt to get comfortable as I failed to fall back to sleep. Day 3 I woke up cold, wet, and naked. The days and nights seem to be a few hours longer than what I'm used to, maybe a 28 or 30-hour day in total. Today I will make cordage. After stoking the fire, I warmed up one of the last 3 spider legs, then ate it for breakfast. I will tidy up my camp and improve my overhead shelter before heading out. During the night I was thinking about it and remembered that I can also make cordage from different types of tree bark, but these were not that strong and usually needed to be much thicker, almost the size of rope before they were useful. That of course isn't what I need. I could also make some sort of needle for sewing the spider leather. I should be able to complete the task without it, but I didn't want to do a crap job and risk having to fix my sandals constantly. Sometimes it is just better to take your time and do the job right the first time. The incline down into the valley was steep, but there was much less tree coverage here. This is where I would search for the plants that I needed for the cordage. I'm looking for smaller undergrowth plants, not giant trees. The trek down the hill was easy but rocky. My feet protested with each and every step. I found several plant types along the way. With each new plant I would crush it on a rock with my club and rub the stalk in my hands till the plants separated. No good fibers were located. I had walked about 2 miles when I started hearing a large animal bellowing in the distance. It was a deep thunderous bellow. I imagined something like a bear, or for all I know it could have been a dinosaur. I decided to head back to camp and get lunch. My expedition was fruitless, and I had considered an alternative type of cordage and likely much easier despite the very likely risk to my life. I will try making twine out of the spider silk. I keep claiming to be smart but miss obvious solutions. I just wasted half a day when the lazy solution was within reach. I am truly dumb about being smart. I'm out here in the wilderness surviving on wit. I need to improve. I wonder how hard it is to raise a stat naturally. Oh, that reminds me, I opened the system and my skill summon shadow is in fact now at level 1. If I'm lucky, I can pull down one of the hanging strands and flee before the spiders drop down on me. Once returning to camp, I immediately warmed up a spider leg and ate it, only 2 legs left. I then decided to level up Shadow Strike. This was easily done. The triggers were much easier and the skill happened naturally. After performing a few air strikes, a ball of shadow-like flames appeared around my hands. The activation cost was 5 ki, but seems to also cost 1 ki every 20 seconds. When I performed a kick, the flames would swirled around my body and then down my leg to my foot. If I stopped kicking, then the flames again raced all the way to my arm in a swirling motion. This was a neat effect, but in a fight it kind of telegraphs my intent. The skill's usage is simple and straightforward. I punched a tree several times. This was good. I couldn't feel the impact on my fist. This was some sort of hardening technique. Without having to worry about hurting my fist, I can just go all out with each punch. This is the constant use skill I need. I tried to get the flame to extend to my club. This, however, was unsuccessful. I managed to level up the skill and it's now level 1. I laid down and took a quick nap. It was a good nap, a solid few hours, and any lost sleep from the uncomfortable night before was restored to past full. I tended the fire once again. I placed a pile of twigs and sticks into the fire and stirred the ashes with my spear shaft. This covers up the unburned wood and prevents them from burning quickly. It's a way to keep a decent bed of coals going ready for later. I will use this camp again, and when I would need the fire, I won't have to take the time to relight it. I returned to the nearby stream and soaked my tired feet for a while. While resting there, I heard some squeals and a pig-like grunting off in the distance. I left one of the cooked spider legs back at camp, and I hoped that wouldn't invite unwanted critters into camp. Another thing I should have considered. Food needed to be stored properly. If the local critters started showing up for food, then I would have to relocate my camp, and I quite liked this one. I headed off to get the spider silk. Hopefully by nightfall I would be able to have my crafting done. I looked back toward the camp and remembered I cut the trees to see if I could get sap. I'll remember to check them on my way back. The trip to the spider's territory was uneventful. I slowly approached the area and saw that there was now a new tendril hanging down from the treetops. Also, the 2 abandoned spider legs were gone. I hope I didn't just alert the gnolls to my presence. This one was newer and shiny, unlike the dull coloring of the other webs. I didn't know if it would be sticky or stretchy because it was new, but when I was tapping the other, they didn't seem sticky or elastic at all. I selected the one farthest away from the water. There was another strand nearby, but I wanted the one on the edge. I let my finger lightly glide along the silk surface. It was ever so slightly sticky, but the strands themselves felt more like hair than what I imagined what they would feel like. I took my club and wrapped the last foot of the strand around it. Once finished, I quickly searched my surroundings for any possible dangers. Satisfied, I pulled as hard as I could, throwing all my body weight into it. A loud crack echoed throughout the forest as a large tree limb broke free and came crashing down near me. In addition, 2 large spiders thudding to the ground next to it. The branch was larger in diameter than my leg and about 7 foot long. It might weigh more than 100 pounds, and I'm lucky it missed me. I immediately abandoned the web and ran like hell, making sure to get my club free of the web before I used up the slack and pulled it taut. I didn't stop running till I reached the stream near my camp. Once again, I soaked my feet in the stream, listening for the squeals and grunts from the forest creatures that I had heard earlier. I heard nothing and checked the wounded trees for sap on my way back. One tree did in fact produce a small amount of sap. I quickly cut zigzagging lines along the tree's base, and with luck I would have enough sap by morning. I'll wait an hour and head back to the spider's nest. I returned to my camp and started working the spider leather. It would take 4 separate pieces to make my footwear. The first piece would wrap around the bottom of my foot and then be laced up along the top, leaving my toes visible in the open end. The next piece would wrap around my heel and Achilles tendon and lace up the front. Around the heel, I would attach the 2 pieces, leaving an overlaying flap on the sides. This would allow both of the separate pieces to slide along the joint. Hopefully this will prevent any pinching or, more importantly, a loss in flexibility in the joint section. The leather-like carapace was flexible but not so much like that of real leather. The laces that stitched it together would all be one piece. This would make taking them off and putting them on time-consuming, but it would offer a decent amount of protection. If I came across some biting critter, my tendon would be protected. I made 16 separate piercings where the bindings would go, then made the second sandal identical to the first. It was time to head back. The plan this time was to cut the silk free of the branch and retreat. I do want to kill more spiders, but I don't want to try again without my spear. After getting another spider, I will have 6 larger pieces of spider leather, and I will start making some clothing from it. The trip back to the spider's area went quickly. Having made the trip several times now, the path was familiar and I was less cautious knowing that it was a relatively safe path. Once I arrived, I again surveyed the area for threats and saw none. The silk and its attached log were right where I had left them, with no sign of the spiders. The fall was not fatal for them, but I'm willing to bet they weren't completely unharmed from such a fall. Knowing that there are at least 2 left, with luck the injured ones won't be interested in hunting or fighting. I approached the downed branch quickly and noticed what I can easily recognize as a spider's egg sac attached to it. Not knowing much about spiders, I can't determine how soon the egg sac would mature, but when it does, hunting spiders might become much more dangerous. The egg sac did, however, look rather new, and I should be safe to come back with my spear and hunt a few more times in the coming days without having to worry about baby spiders. The spider knife cut through the web easily and I managed to pull it free. I then coiled it around my arm, no different that I had done a million times with extension cords back in the real world. Perhaps that is a false statement. This world is obviously real? Well then, back in the other world. Glancing around for spiders, I noticed cuts in the trees all around me. So the spiders lower themselves down on webs but then use their sharp appendages to pierce into the trees as they climb back up. These dangles are triggers that alert the spiders that something is moving around down by the water. A specialized hunting method unique to this species of spiders, no doubt. I hastily retreat from the area with my spider web. The next time I return here, I will kill spiders. I check my status window again, 35 experience points till next level. The spider must have been worth 25 points, and reaching level 2 is double the points of level 1. I wondered as I wandered back to my camp if level 3 will require 80 points. The spider I killed earlier didn't dissipate or drop loot like they do in some of the stories and shows. Not all the shows are the same, so I'm uncertain how it works in this world. Maybe I just need to find a dungeon before I can get loot drops. Maybe there are no loot drops. I don't know. I continue walking while I mull over different ideas. I suppose there are many shows and stories, many descriptions of how things work. Some similarities, some differences. I just hope I live long enough to figure it all out. I pass by the stream without stopping and make a beeline directly back to camp. I take a bunch of twigs and poke them down into the ashes and then pile more on top. With luck the coals are still hot and the fire will stoke back up on its own. Later I can fashion a hot box and take my fire with me, but I'll need better tools. I did see a video where bamboo was used for the same purpose, but I have yet to see any plants similar to it yet. I wonder what the people in this world will be like. I hope it's not some tyrannical government. My mind jumps between topics as I work with the spider silk. I started out by rolling and stretching it in my hands. It's just sticky enough to bind together tightly. Then I roll it in the dirt to remove any leftover stickiness. The holes I made earlier with the spider fang were too small and I used my knife to make them into slots. Using a stick I forced the end through and then I pulled the length through till it was a proper length. Since I did part of the work earlier, this went rather quickly. Before I knew it, I had a brand new set of black sandals with a shiny green hue. I gave the web a final cut, leaving enough length for a bow at the top, but was unsatisfied with the ends of the webbing. It would eventually come apart and that would be bad. I walked to my sap tree and pressed small amounts of pitch into the last inch of the web. Returning back to camp, I removed a burning twig from the fire and burned the pitch black. Marveling at my creation, I placed my sissy feet in and tightened the laces up. The overall feel and function was satisfactory. The shiny green hue was pleasing, but the leather-like soles were a bit slick. I would need to be careful not to slip and lose my footing. I will need to consider a method to add a tread or some way to make a layer of material for better traction. I look over to my spear stave, my next project. If I'm correct, then I should receive weapon crafting level 0 if I repeat the steps in a similar way. Although if I make the spear and can't consider a method of improvement, maybe it won't work. But I do have 2 spider fangs, so we will just have to experiment a little. I take about 4 feet of the spider silk and cut it. I tie a knot in one end and then separate the strands into 3 separate strands, again rolling them in my hand to get them to bind together. I then start making a finely braided length. When I finished, I had less than 2 foot of braided cord. I then take the spear stave and start splitting the end. I made 2 4-inch slits in the shape of an X at the end. Then inserting my knife into the slot, I began to whittle a rounded shape void in the bottom of the groove. This was actually a bit difficult and I did manage to cut my fingers a few times, but I'm a manly man and I'm not going to cry over a little boo-boo. I then took the spider fang and cut off the fleshy sac that was apparently a venom sac, leaving just the fang with a bony knob at one end. This knob fits somewhat snug into the end of the stave and I began to wrap and tie the end. This process took almost as long as it did for me to make a sandal. Once again I walked to the sap tree and I was able to gather up a small amount more. I smeared and pressed it into the web as best as I could. When finished, I determined that I was satisfied. The fang was secured and wouldn't come out just so long as the fang didn't break. Now for the last step, I burned the sap till it bubbled and then dried into a hard mass around my web wrapping. I still have about 30 foot of silk. I will make a 10-foot rope? No, I still need clothing. I can make clothing out of spider leather just like how I did with the sandals and silk. The green hue will be quite stylish and it will be a matching set. I should also try making a shield. I also need a backpack. It would be good to have something to carry stuff in. As soon as I thought this, my spear vanished. Puzzled, I looked around and then thought to myself inventory while I said the words out loud. My status screen popped up and flipped to the personal magic tab. A game-like representation of a character with item slots appeared here. In the right-hand inventory slots appeared a spider-fang spear. This is fantastic. I have a crappy-ass version of an inventory. I reached over and grabbed my club and held it in my right hand. It instantly vanishes into my inventory and it was replaced with the spear. Now the image in the paper doll showed a pathetic wooden cudgel. The system is being mean by calling my club pathetic. I focused on the club and a pop-up appeared. Pathetic wooden cudgel, easily acquired item that is literally found and has no value. I kind of chuckled to myself over the description. I then swapped the spear and club. With the spear visible in the item slot, I focus on it. Spider-fang spear. This spear is a common kobold crafting style found throughout the lands of Valencia. Well, now here is some gleaned information. The system knows more about what's going on than I do. They're kobolds, not gnolls apparently, and I'm in the lands of Valencia. I focus on the word Valencia and nothing happens. I also try with the word kobold, but again nothing happened. I discovered my personal magic. I'm sure there are rules that I will need to learn. Like, can I put this boulder into my right-hand inventory slot? Likely the rules will determine that I have to lift the object with one hand before I can do this. I then stow my sandals into the inventory and they vanish off my feet. Once again I feel the cold earth against my toes. Then they reappear instantly. I didn't feel like I moved and yet they appeared on my feet without me having lifted my feet up off the ground. My former worries about the difficulty of having to take off and put on my sandals are now taken care of. This is great, but it seems this paper doll is a knockoff, lower-tier version of an inventory space. I switch back to my main stats page and read the following. Class: Monk, current level 1, experience till next level 35, key 56 of 56, unallocated stat points 1. Okay, nothing seems to have changed, so I continue to bring items into and from the inventory space. I'm paying close attention to my key values, but they didn't change. Using the inventory space is free to use. Inventories are usually a cheat. There are lots of great ways to cheese out an inventory. It's a double-edged sword in a way. You can easily sneak contraband or illicit items past a city guard to earn money. I personally wouldn't do this, but if nefarious characters know that I have an inventory, they might try and force me to do it anyway. This is something that I should use cautiously. I begin to focus my attention onto the tip of my spear while pondering this. The tip isn't all that great, it's weak and brittle. In its current state, it will break easily. It's just so thin and curved way too much. I walk to the sap tree and circle it a few times, studying it. Then looking around, I try to identify similar trees. There is another 2 or 3 nearby and I withdraw my knife and cut more zigzag patterns into the trunks of the trees, all while being careful not to let the silk grip unwind. Once done, I put the dagger back into the inventory and head back to camp. With my spear now in hand, I go back to camp while glaring at the curved fang tip. I made up my mind to fix it. I grabbed my cudgel and used the sharpened stone sliver to strike at the fang while I rested it on the top of the flat rocks. After the third strike, the last 2 inches of the fang sheared off, leaving an uneven edge. After studying the tip a few moments, then repositioned the spear and started forcing it back and forth against the flat stone boulder's surface. The fang was brittle and its hardness was similar to that of glass. It didn't take long to grind the break into a long, slender tip. Now I grin as I marveled over my handiwork. I take up a fighting stance and started practicing lunging forward with the spear. After a few repetitions, I added a few blocking motions in slightly changing and evolving it as I continue to practice. I fine-tuned my movements to what seemed better and more natural motions. I continued the repetitions until it was fully dark. I once again walked to the stream and bathed. I know I should not be navigating the forest in the dark, but it was close by and I smelled ripe. Returning to camp, I felt refreshed. I loaded up the fire and fell asleep as soon as I closed my eyes. Day 4? I'm starting to lose track. I awoke naked and lost in an unknown world. It was raining again, this time much harder than previously. The dirt atop my shelter had most of the impurities washed out and the remaining clay had settled into an almost waterproof layer. I opened my status screen and there were no issues reading the screen in the dark. My pathetic cudgel lay beside me as the spear and knife were still in my inventory. I studied the paper doll's inventory slots. There were 4 ring slots per hand, but only 1 slot on each hand was designated as a primary ring slot. The others listed as minor ring slots. There was a head, neck, back, forearms, gloves, shoulders, chest, waist, legs, and finally feet. That's 18 separate total slots plus the 2 weapon slots. With further examination, the back also included bow and quiver, but the waist also included quiver. I suppose some might prefer a hip quiver over a back quiver, or maybe some classes would use both if they expended a lot of arrows in combat situations. The skill isn't as trash as I had first considered. I have loads of utility here. I can quick draw a lot of armor and weapons. Perhaps someday I would have specific resistance items that I could swap on the fly during dangerous combat situations. It should be a few hours till morning and I can't imagine the fire is still going with the rain and all. Today I need to get some food. Wish I had the forethought to put some wood under the shelter. I won't be able to start another fire anytime soon with the wetwood. I decided to try working with my skills. Next on the list is Prismatic Burst. Based on the description, it should be a charge-up skill. Again, I had some basic understanding of how it worked. The information was there, close enough that I can almost recall it, but as if it was some forgotten information. I know it. Stepping out into the rain, I make a large circular motion with my arms. I tighten my muscles and bring myself into a defensive position. That's close. I felt the power start to surround me. I do this again and a soap-like bubble surrounds me. I try to release it, but it just fades out of existence. Okay, now I can create the effect. I need a trigger. I ponder this for a moment. Then again, a sweeping motion with my arms, the bubble forms and I stomp my foot. With a loud bang, the bubble rapidly expands outward and it kicked up some leaves away from me. I check my status screen. Key is already 46 of 56. That's 5 points each activation. I repeat the motion, but this time I charge it up more. After about 2 full seconds, I then sensed that the bubble wasn't getting any stronger. I slammed down my foot to trigger the effect. The resulting bang was deafening. The ground was scraped bare, extending from a small crater beneath me out to a full 5 foot away from me. There was a noticeable pause in the rain as the expanding dome pushed the rain away with expanding force. Damn, I think to myself. That's a lot of force this time. I check my stats page. Key 36 of 56. This time I used double the key to activate it. That's an initial cost of 5 and 1 point for each 0.5 seconds. With practice, I should be able to control its effect more. But for now, I'm satisfied with the results. I now have 36 key. I'll watch to see how fast it regenerates while resting. I return to my shelter, status window opened. I have not figured out how to use the movement skill yet. I will rest up a bit before working on it. Prismatic Burst is now level 1. I suppose if I was part of a community, I could just ask others all my questions, but I don't know where the edge of the civilized world begins. With my luck, I could be headed further into the wilderness. There is a chance that I'm going the exact opposite direction I should be going. Then again, I have probably not traveled more than 10 or 15 miles from where I started. It's likely even less with the slow speed I was traveling due to being barefooted and all. I rolled out from under the shelter and grabbed the wood I used to make the first fire. The wood I used for the ceiling is probably still dry. I could get a fire going and rebuild the ceiling again later. Then again, I might not stay here much longer. I do have some additional crafting projects to achieve. I suppose I'll go kill another spider, then craft some clothing, perhaps a back pouch. I need 2 more spiders to reach experience level 2. That would be 12 more large pieces of spider leather. I could make a leather skirt that wouldn't be too difficult, and a backpack. A back pouch is more realistic. Well, if it has straps and a flap on top, I guess that still counts as a backpack. I'm starting to collect things that need to be carried, and I want my hands free for my spear. Come to think of it, I could make a shield too. The middle section of the spider legs could be useful. I have a pile of them halfway to the spider nest. And I know there is at least 1 more spider's nest below the waterfall I saw from the cliff edge. But if that nest doesn't have kobolds managing the population, it could be a more dangerous hunting grounds. I know that there are at least 2 more big spiders up here, and even if I overharvest the kobold spiders, there are still an unknown number of spider eggs. The population will rebound at some point in the near future. I don't know how long it takes for the spiders to get that big, but it's likely there are plenty other nests along those creek beds. The only ones I've seen so far are above water. I should have explored this area near the stream better. I could actually be right next to another nest all this time and have not even known it. I did hear some creature squealing nearby. I should investigate. My safety and security are important, and I'm not ready to go into the valley. It seems relatively safe up here as the cliff makes a natural barrier and small kobolds seem to live here comfortably. Again, I have made risky choices. Some of my other choices seem to have been unintentionally good. I should be a little bit more careful than I'm being. My endurance just ticked up a point. I'm not sure if it was regenerated while I was practicing. I'll start the mental timer now. I really need to think things through better. I'm just becoming too comfortable in this environment. This place certainly isn't as safe as it was back home where I grew up. There are so many things to consider. I'm unsure where to even begin. I've already had time to grow and learn the ins and outs for surviving in this small area. Assuming I don't start a war with the kobolds, I could do well staying here and continuing to level and gear up. I also have an unspent attribute point. It might be best not to use that point just yet. If I can increase my stats through exercise and study, it might be more beneficial to use the points on skills later on. If 10 is the human maximum without considering levels, then using points below a stat of 10 could just be a waste. I wonder how Shroud of Shadows works. Would it be easier to use the skill at night? Well, I have at least another hour or 2 before morning, and it might not be a great idea to practice new skills at night. I should grab more sleep. I ponder various problems for a while, then eventually fall asleep. I wake up in full daylight. Day 5, alone and mostly naked in an unknown world. Well, maybe I was more tired than I thought. I opened my eyes and the rain has apparently stopped. I checked my status windows for any changes but didn't discover anything new. I got up and started milling around the camp. I summoned my spear and began practicing for today's spider hunt. I continued to keep an eye on my ki levels. It's 1 point for every 10 minutes. I can fully recharge from 0 in 8 hours. Then walked over to the sap trees and used 2 sticks to harvest it all. 1 stick to scrape it off the trees and the other stick to collect it all into a large mess. I set the collected sap down on the flat rock and retrieved my fire-making tools. They will dry out when they start heating up, but I'll need to make more chaff and kindling. I disassemble a section of the shelter to get with that slightly more dry. With a deep sigh, I start the fire-making process from scratch. I start by making fine shavings from the dry sticks. This time I made much more than I did previously. I'm expecting this to be more difficult and take longer. There's even a bigger chance of failure. I began the process. As I pumped my arms, I opened the status screen to check my ki. I'll watch to see if regular physical exertion will affect my ki. My ki did eventually tick down a point. It was slow, and that might be offset by the 1 point every 10 minutes. After the first hour, my ki had ticked down by 8 points. My arms were almost completely spent. So this exertion is different than ki loss. It still burns ki, but I'm feeling spent. I feel low on ki while being almost full on ki. I'm not entirely clear how this works yet. I'll worry about this more some other time. I sped up the process. I'm getting impatient and I am close to getting this fire started. I just needed one last push to get me over the finish line. With another lost point of ki, I managed to get an ember. I cupped my hands and gently blew, but it unfortunately went out. I again started pumping my arms and soon after created another tiny ember. But this time I didn't stop. I continued rubbing the sticks together. Finally, there were 2 embers. The new ember being much larger and hotter than the first. I cupped my hands and gave it a long, slow breath. The chaff burst into a small flame. I want this fire, and I can make another fire starter later. I slowly added more, and hot coals started appearing on the grooved stick as it burned. The fire starter is now part of the fire. I carefully lowered it down into the pit and tossed the damp kindling down on top of it, careful not to smother it. I rested as I patiently waited for it to grow on its own. People tend to mess with their fire too much too soon. A fire wants to burn, you just have to leave it alone and let it do its thing. A person throws a cigarette from their car window and burns 1,000,000 acres of forest. Fires don't need constant fussing. You need to learn when you have to sit back and allow a fire to be a fire. As moments pass, I confidently announced, well, this is another successful campfire. I laid back down in the shelter and began meditating. When I finish, I calculated and determined that Ki regenerate about 1 point every minute while meditating. A total guess really, I can't track time while meditating. Hours pass in what feels like minutes. Leaving my shelter, I added more wood to the fire and placed the larger pieces of wood around the edges to dry out. Then I summoned the spider knife into my left hand and began applying the sap to its handle. Once it was coated nicely, I held it over the fire and slowly heated the sap till it turned black. I wasn't as careful as I should have been, and I managed to light the silk on fire once or twice. It seemed to almost melt more than burn. When satisfied with the results, I vigorously rubbed it into the dirt to get rid of any stickiness. Yes, I made my new knife look all dirty and used, but it's all about functionality. I don't want a sticky knife in my hand. I went down the mental checklist. Spear is ready, fire is going, knife is good. I summoned my leather sandals onto my feet. Next, I took a quick look at my supplies. 25 foot of web strands, 8 small pieces of spider leather, and 1 pathetic cudgel. I almost forgot to count the cudgel, poor thing, it's so underappreciated. I decide to make a bag before the spider hunt. Nothing pretty, just functional. I take the remaining 8 pieces of spider leather and perforate the edges and then crudely stitch them together with the silk. I didn't need the full thickness of the web, so I separated the silk into 3 separate strands, each about 5 feet long. This gave me 15 feet of thin strands that I used to bind the pieces into a rectangle. Well, the pieces were not all the same, so it was more of a trapezoid. I then took the remaining threads and coiled them up, placing them into the shelter. I again made a 5-foot section and made a braid after tying the knot same as the 2 previous times. Once this was done, I added the strap to the back, and there you have it. 1 wilderness leather man bag. It's not beautiful, but damn is it a useful thing to have with you. I put the man bag on my shoulder and turned to leave. A thought entered my head, and I opened up the inventory section of my status. I attempted to place the bag into the inventory slot for shoulders, but this didn't work. Next, I tried the quiver and back inventory slot, but this didn't work either. Next, I placed the strap around my neck and tried to stow it into the neck slot, and poof, it disappeared. It didn't go into the neck slot, but instead went into the chest slot. I grinned as I focused on the slot, and a description window appeared. An unfinished and poorly crafted leather breastplate is all it said. I was delighted, not because of the description. I was thrilled at not having to carry it. I headed out of camp with some pep in my step. My endurance should be just about full when I reached the spider nest. As I crossed the halfway mark, I stopped to pick up all the spider parts that I had left along the path previously. Here were 5 more spider daggers and 5 more middle leg sections. I summoned my bag, placed the loot in, and then stowed it back into the inventory slot. This took all but a few moments, and I was back on my way. I left my cudgel back at camp, but wasn't too worried about it. It would have been smart to bring it, as it would have not encumbered me in any way. Hopefully, I won't regret leaving it behind. As I reached the spider area, I slowed my pace and approached slowly. It seems the kobolds were here again this morning, and they left a carcass. There were 3 spiders on the ground wrapping the abandoned husk in silk. 3 is a lot of spiders. One of them was larger than the other, and not just a small amount. This one was huge. It was also the one doing the wrapping, as the other 2 spiders just milled about nearby. This was going to be tricky. What's my play here? I could ambush one and then retreat. I could wait till they started back up the tree, but that might mean missing my chance at catching any of them. I decided to return later and coax just one of them down from the tree at a time. I have seen what works, and I'm not interested in fighting 3 at once. I head back to camp. When I reached the small stream near my camp, I detoured and followed along the stream. It wasn't long before I again saw the telltale markings of another spider area. This time there were 4 dangles. One dangle was new and shiny and the other 3 had bits of leaves and stuff stuck in the dull-colored web. Several of the trees had claw marks leading up the trunk. One of the trees was the same type I was getting sap from. This tree had dozens of puncture marks all up and down with copious amounts of sap forming small blobs along its surface. A good find, but an unnecessary one, as I already had enough sap and I didn't have to risk a spider ambush to get it. The canopy was slightly more open here as I could see some clear sky above. This seems safer as there are fewer areas that the spiders can drop down from. I approached the first strand and gently tapped the string, retreating back as I scanned the area above me. I did this 9 more times before deciding to try another strand. I stepped up, gave it a little tap, and then I backed away again. After the 5th tap, I looked up and could see the spider slowly descending. I know they don't drop till they're about 10 feet from the ground, so I moved in and gave it another tap. The spider descended faster this time but stopped around 15 feet from the ground. So okay, game face on, 1 more tap and it's a spider fight. I slowly approached again but didn't tap the web strand. The spider moved down again and I readied myself. I know it can lunge a good distance. I'll try to get it to lunge and I'll spear it as it's in the air. If I miss, then I guess it sucks to be me. We both waited, neither making the first move. I dared to give the web a little tap, and just as I touched the web, the Ginsu murder blender made its move. I didn't follow my own plan. I took a quick jab and scored a hit as it fell the final 10 feet, then I leapt back and the spider didn't lunge forward. Instead it raised up on its feet and waved 4 of its legs in the air while hissing. I took a few steps closer, ready to jab again. It didn't lunge, but instead it charged. It used its back 4 legs to move while waving the other 4 legs around, ready to pierce and slice me to pieces. I made my move and the spear went straight through it. This is great, hoo-hoo, except that it didn't die. Because I pierced it through, I ended up too close to it. I let go of the spear and stepped back. Now I regret not having my cudgel. On the plus side, as I circled the spider, it was unable to turn with the spear dragging on the ground. It just stumbled about each time it tried to move. I managed to get behind it. This of course gave me a free attack from behind, and despite claiming several times that I was in some way smart, I did a stupid and risky thing. I drew my spider dagger from the inventory and jumped right on the spider. It wasn't a completely terrible idea. It just involves a lot of unnecessary risk. You know, the bet your life on not screwing it up sort of thing. My feet both landed along the joints of the back legs. I succeeded in part, but didn't quite go as planned. I wanted to pin it down, but instead both the back legs just simply broke off. It lurched forward, and instead of stabbing it like I planned, I ended up with the tip of my own spear way too close to my crotch. Well, now both me and the spider were both in awkward positions. I grabbed a hold of the spear tip. Okay then, now the spider can't turn around to face me, but it can swipe me with its bladed legs. I am not in a good position to stab it, so instead I pull on the spear. Slowly, I dragged all 7 foot of the stave through the spider's body. Once the spear pulled free, I turned it around in my hands, then pierced it several times with the rapid jabs I practiced. I aimed for the main body section as I didn't want holes in my new spider leather. I quickly scanned my surroundings, making sure there wasn't any more murder Ginsus sneaking around. With a sigh, I stowed away my spear and checked my status. That entire encounter, and I didn't even use any of my new skills. I hoisted up my spider, then set it right back down. I wanted to use a skill, so okay, I swung my leg and used Summon Shadow. With a bang, a shadowy blade shoots forth around my foot and I cleanly cut the thorax off the spider. I then quickly retrieved the 2 severed legs, taking some time placed them into my bag after folding them up. The small bag is already getting full. I'll unload it back at camp before my next hunt. After storing my bag, I then hoisted up my spider corpse and walked back to camp so I can butcher it. I set about the task with no pause and tossed all 8 legs onto the fire. I now have 16 middle leg sections, 9 small spider daggers, 2 large, not including the one I put the grip onto, and 3 spider unaltered spider fangs. 8 small spider leather sections and 6 large. I made piles of the materials under my shelter. For experimentation purposes, I grabbed a small leather section and secreted the yellow fluid from the fangs onto it. I placed a second section on top like a sandwich and rubbed them around till both sides were evenly wet. I then dug out a shallow hole and covered both pieces up with the dirt. This is likely a digestive fluid, and if it works the way I think it should, I'm hoping that it will soften the carapace pieces and add more flexibility. I'll check on it again after I eat breakfast. The larger sections of spider leather are slightly curved. I placed one on the flat boulder, and after selecting a hand-sized rock, I began to tenderize it. With this, I hope to get rid of the curves without losing too much of the rigidness. I want them flat, not soft. After a few minutes, I succeeded in doing just that. The leather flattened out nicely, but the texture now looks worn and scuffed up. Functional is once again my goal. I repeated the process with all 6 leather pieces and laid them down side by side on the boulder. Each of these are of different lengths. I take the shortest one and cut it in half horizontally. I can get 3 sections from the longest piece, the same length as these 2. Then I get 2 more from each of the shorter sections. In total, I now have 11 similar-sized pieces of spider leather and lots of scraps from the ends. Using the knife, I made 2 rows of narrow vertical slits along one edge of each piece. Stopping to admire my work, I glanced over to the spider carcass. I should dispose of it before it attracts critters. I carried the husk over to the cliff edge near the stream and set it back down. In almost every Isakai, monsters have a beast core or a small gem in the chest near where the heart should be. I know that spiders' organs are in the thorax. Hopefully, I didn't just make another mistake by taking only the back end of the spider. Yes, this was disgusting. The thorax was soft and squishy. I'm basically rooting around in its guts here, but I did happen to find a hard small object. I grasped it tightly and pulled till it ripped free. This was in fact a small gem-like red object, which must be a monster's core. I set it down on the ground, then heaved the carcass sections down over the cliff. I then bathed myself and cleaned up the core to examine it. I expected it to be like a gemstone, but it was just a red opaque marble-like object. I finished cleaning up and headed back to camp. I'm going to grab a quick bite and then hunt another murder spider. This will level me up and I can spend the rest of the day crafting. As I approached camp, I caught a glimpse of what I thought was a kobold in the forest beyond my camp. This was not my plan. I hate when things don't work out. Frozen in place, spear in hand, I scanned my surroundings cautiously. I listened carefully, eyes darting around looking for movement. Then for a brief moment, I saw the tip of a spear appear next to a tree and then disappear again as its wielder pulled it back behind the tree. Okay, there's definitely kobolds here, and it seemed like they're sneaking up and surrounding my camp. I can hear the juices of my spider legs hissing as the fats drip and spatter into the fire below. Damn, that smells good. The aroma might have led them to me, or perhaps they spotted me earlier and are now just arriving in force to attack me. Also, I've been making a lot of noise with my skills. I've made my presence known in a bunch of ways. I hastily gathered all of my belongings up and stuffed them into my bag. My bag was jammed-packed and bulging with my loot. I stowed it away into my inventory space, then replaced my spider dagger with the club into the inventory, then placing my dagger into the other hand slot. With my hands now empty, I picked up my spear and retreated. I left 4 of the spider legs on the fire. If they're after the food, then I'll let them have some. If they're after me, I'll figure it out quickly. If my presence is a territorial issue, then I'll leave. Avoiding a fight with an unknown number of hostiles is my best bet for survival right now. I might be able to fight off 1 or 2 as I have a size and reach advantage, but spears can be thrown. If they show up in numbers and only some of them throw spears, my chances of surviving are dismal. I jog all the way to the top of the incline and then downward into the valley, checking behind me constantly to see if I'm being pursued. Each time I look back, I catch a glimpse of 1 or 2 kobolds moving swiftly between the trees. They are following me from a distance, but this isn't an all-out pursuit. They're also not making the yipping, yowling noises I've heard them make during other encounters. They're being cautious, they're following me, but not hunting or hurting me. I quickly reached the incline and started my descent downward into the valley. Looking back once again, I spotted 5 kobolds just standing at the top of the incline. They glare down at me, each with a spear in hand, but they make no effort to continue pursuing me. I was trespassing and they wanted me gone. I'm more than happy to leave, and they seem satisfied with the current outcome. We all seem to agree I don't need to be there, and we're all good with a non-violent solution. In the future, I will move my campsites more often and take much more care to conceal my activities. Avoiding similar situations only takes a small amount of effort, and if I continue pissing off the locals, it's going to be the end of me. I continued downhill past the area that I had heard a great beast bellowing the day before. I slowed my pace and began walking more carefully, not to step on branches and make unnecessary noise. I then turned to my left and head toward the waterfall where I had admired the view. I want to level up and I need more equipment. I walked for about 2 hours and knew that I should be getting close to the bottom of the waterfall. My sandals are holding up great and I was worried about blisters. I did have to stop a few times and dislodge hitchhikers from the sandals. I unsummoned them and then resummoned them and the tiny stone or twig would be gone. I even learned I could summon just one of the sandals at a time. In the inventory slot I focused on the sandal. A window appeared and it said, Fisher Hide Boots. Okay, new information, these spiders are called fishers. They dangle their threads down and wait for something to catch. I get it. Also, my inventory seems to be a way to get information. A quasi-identify skill. I'll have to play around with it more to see how good the information is. So, my personal magic is even more useful now. I'm no longer disappointed with it, in fact, I think it's similar to having 2 different skills, each slightly less useful. A dedicated inventory skill would be amazing and an identification skill would be wonderful. I got both, neither one as good as it could have been, but the 2 together is decent. Looking up, I can now see where the canyon emptied out its water from the top of the cliff. I approached the area slowly, only moving about 10 steps at a time before stopping to listen and look around. I soon found the nest and this one was much bigger by the indicators I saw. There were 11 web strands descending from the treetops. At least 3 of them looked like newer webs, but the canopy was very thick here and visibility here wasn't great. With my bag being so full I would have to abandon most of the spider. I'll just cut the thorax free and leave the rest here. I'll get all the leathers and the core. With a smaller load in my arms I can leave quickly and harvest the goodies when I reach a safe distance. Okay, let's do this by the numbers. No mistakes, I want a fast and clean kill, then get the heck out of here fast. I select a strand on the edge again, this one was spaced away from the others, but it was also the furthest from the water. I began the game of tap-tap while looking upward into the trees. After the 3rd tap I heard movement from up in the canopy but couldn't see anything. I gave the strand another tap and I could just see a dim reflection from the spider's carapace. I know that I'm being risky again, but so long as I kill the spider I'll level up and get free healing. I can afford to be a little reckless. I charge up the prismatic burst skill and wait. I gave another tap and it dropped down. Again I got in a solid jab in as it fell. I stomped my foot and blasted it away. The spider landed on its back, rolled over, then reared up and hissed at me. I attempted to close the distance when the world suddenly darkened and I slid forward like I was sliding on ice. I must have just triggered Shroud of Shadows. I let the skill effect just as I reached the spider and instantly thrust my spear in just under its left eye. Again the spear went right through it and out the back of the spider. Ding! The spider rolled over onto its back dead with its legs twitching as it curled up into a ball. I summoned the knife into my left hand and cut the thorax free. As I was doing this the legs twitched and one slashed me just above the ear. Damn, almost a perfect kill. I didn't even bother to look around, I just heaved up the thorax and split. From hunted to hunter in under 2 hours. I headed back from the direction that I arrived from. I need to move fast and I know this direction was safe just moments ago. The thorax only weighed about 30 pounds. I walked for a full 5 minutes before stopping. It's still early in the day, I need to butcher the spider and eat. I could also start looking for a place to make a new campsite. I quickly cut up the spider and fish out the core. The core looked just like the last one, I could discern no difference from the 2. I summoned my bag and then dumped its contents onto the ground. I carefully repacked the bag so as to get it all in. The spider legs were still hot. I didn't have time to eat, I wanted to keep moving. I placed the bag into storage and moved on. I wasn't worried about finding water, I already know that there were several places where water poured over the cliff's edge. The water will eventually pool together into a stream and flow down the valley. I'll explore the valley for a time, I will keep traveling in a straight line toward the hill on the other side. I know what I am truly hoping to see, but I'm not willing to say it out loud or I might jinx myself. I continue to walk for a full 2 hours before reaching a stream. It's a good-sized one, bigger than I had hoped to find. 15 feet wide and apparently knee or hip deep. Here there should be larger fish, I can try spearing them, or if I have time I can make a fish hook and cord for fishing. Making these items are in my skill set but they're time-consuming and I honestly don't want to do it. Just the though of having to eventually make another fire is causing me stress and anxiety. Currently I have enough food, it's even cooked already, so call me lazy if you like, these menial survival tasks are just too tedious to bother with and I would much rather get some miles in rather than set up roots in one spot. Most normal people don't understand how lazy smart people can be. They say the laziest person will always find the most efficient way to do a job. It's true, smart people are lazy. People often think intelligent people are successful or famous, but it's just the opposite really. Those types of people are ambitious, determined, motivated, and disciplined. These traits don't show up on an IQ test. When everything comes to you easy, you just kick back and go with the flow. Smart people are more likely to choose low-stress jobs, favoring choices that improve quality of life before financial gains. I think most just don't get it, and even more just don't care. My wisdom is only a 5. So hey, maybe I'm the one who doesn't get it. I quickly crossed the stream barefoot. Stopping only long enough to quickly lay down and dunk myself briefly. The water feels great. I scrubbed the dead spider juices off. I also spent a moment gently scrubbing at the cut on my head. Head wounds tend to bleed a lot. I need to keep this clean. I don't expect to level up again today, so it has healed the old-fashioned way. The creek bottom is a solid sheet of bedrock with small pebbles along its banks. This area was only about knee-deep. It's a nice area. I spied a good place to sit and rest. I'll have a quick look around first and then play in the water later. I make a quick circular trek ending back by the boulder I spotted a few minutes ago. I remove my bag and pull out a spider leg. It's still hot and dripping with fat. I return the rest and crack the leg open with my club before seriously devouring it. I was famished. So heat and time are retained in the storage space. Hot items stay hot endlessly until they are removed. Another consistency with the stories from my previous world. Storing my bulging bag in this way seems like a cheat. If not, well, then it's certainly bending the rules a little. This is a good spot. I've found there's good lighting coming in from the stream, the trees are less densely packed, and I have good visibility here in all directions. The sound of the water is calm and soothing, and the light cool breeze here is refreshing. I again produce my bag and quickly grab the silk and the pieces of spider leather. I left the buried leather up there. I wanted to see if I could make softened leather, but now it's too late. I put the bag back into the inventory so as not to let my food cool. I divide the webs into 2 separate strands and begin to make a thin braid. I continue this for the entire 20-foot length and then bind the last foot with the beginning of the other length. It's much thicker in this section, but it's a strong connection. I finish braiding the entire length. It's hard to tell, but I have maybe 28 or 29 foot when finished. Measuring the braid around my waist, I cut about 4 foot and secure one end in a tight knot. I then thread this through the leather pieces with effort, using a stick to force it through the narrow openings. Once this task is complete, I wrap it around my waist. It looks good. Not a bad fit, but it's gonna rub me the wrong way, and that's not a good thing. I laid the unfinished skirt down on the boulder and began making a series of long vertical slits down the leather. This time I wrapped it back around my waist and secured it tightly. It covers all my soft bits, doesn't rub quite so much. It has less protection like this, but I'm no longer stark naked. If I ever get more spider leather, I can put a thicker, more protective layer over it and then start making more armor parts. For now, the leather has better uses. It must be getting toward noon. I have other crafting project to complete. I once again produce my bag and remove the middle sections of the spider legs. These are the more solid hard parts that I held onto, not knowing what I would use them for. I placed 4 of them into a square and tied off the corners with the webbing. I then placed more leg sections on the inside in a criss-crossing woven pattern, securely forcing them together as tightly and solid as I could make it. I then looking over my work and decided to make some alterations. With a bit of force, I moved 2 of the ends closer together. This formed an elongated diamond shape. After making several loops with my braided silk, I was able to secure it to my forearm with a thick hand grip. The tip of the diamond shape extended just past my knuckles and the other side just past my elbow. The construction was solid, but it was a bit unstable as I couldn't think of a better way of securing it to my arm. All in all, it was a decent usable shield. I then used some of my remaining spider leather and perforated them along the edges. I unwove a short length of the spider silk and laced the pieces together in an overlaying scale-like pattern. I secured them to the face of my shield. And there we have it, spear and shield style. I danced half-naked atop the boulder singing spear and shield style to the beat of Gangnam Style. This continued on much longer than I'd care to admit, but cut me some slack. I haven't seen or talked to another person in days. I needed an emotional release. Lack of human interactions are making me go a bit squirrely. Once my antics were over, I stood upon the boulder and practiced my spear thrusts, this time adding in shield blocks into the repeated maneuvers. This is the beginning of a kata. I did take some martial arts training, but I didn't stick with it. It was about 4 months of jiu-jitsu, and later in life I tried Aikido. I disliked the Aikido, it was just too different than anything that I had known. I was a wrestling champion in high school and the jiu-jitsu training was well suited to my skills, but Aikido was just too different. Regardless, I didn't have enough formal martial arts training to make much difference. My monk class might have been based partly on my wrestling skills. The skills I learned from wrestling may as well be considered martial skills. I was an army man, I'm sure it's much different in the Marines. As for my training during the military, well, 3 mornings of self-defense training doesn't count for much. My army training didn't teach many hand-to-hand combat-related skills. I did learn things like tactics, movement, and of course firearm skills. Army guards and patrols, Marines do all the real fighting. In the Army, less than 10% of military personnel ever see combat. For the most part, personal training is more or less left up to the soldiers to learn during their own time. While I practiced, I imagined a black shadow point at the end of the spear, sometimes it was on the front edge of the shield while I punched with my offhand. The shadow strike skill would not trigger for me in this way. I kept this up for only about an hour. Again, slightly evolving and improving the movement techniques once again. My movements are much more natural and flowed easily from offense to defense and back. Then I continued my practice while imagining fighting the spiders. From how I observed the spiders' attacks, I developed quick counters and blocks. I sat back down on the boulder covered in sweat and opened the system screen. Male, human, dimensional traveler, age 16, strength 9, agility 9, constitution 6, intellect 13, wisdom 6, charisma 4, class, monk, current level 2, experience till next level 65, key 64 of 64, available stat points 2, current skills. Language common, literacy common basic, jewelry crafting level 2, martial skills. Basic hand-to-hand level 3 martial weapons. Spear, level 1. Racial traits. Adaptation from human, energy manipulation from dimensional traveler, magical affinity, light and darkness. Personal magic, paper doll, create key level 1, shadow strike level 1, prismatic burst level 1, shroud of shadows level 0, and the last one is summon key level 1. There were a few changes. First, my wisdom increased by a point. I'm sure why, maybe it's level related, maybe it's because I'm learning more about this new world. I wait till level 4 and see if it goes up again. I looked everything over to see if I missed anything, and that's when I noticed martial spear skill. Level 1. My practice has yielded results. Satisfied with the new changes, I prepared to get up and head back into the forest, but then I paused. Returning back to the main screen, I focused on racial traits, human. Then focused the word adaptation until a pop-up window appeared. Adaptation, humans are versatile beings and can thrive in most biomes. Well, okay then, short and to the point. The information doesn't really help me personally and it's not as useful as energy manipulation, but overall I suppose that it's good for humans in general. I summon my bag and stare at it for a moment. This needs to be improved, it's too small and it's silly that I have to glitch it into the chest inventory slot. I empty the bag carefully into a neat pile onto the top of the boulder. I then take a seat and begin cutting all the silk threads separating some of the spider leather sections. Then taking the fresh spider leather which is still rounded and hard, I perforate the edges and arrange them side by side. Well, functional, but it's gonna look like I have a spider ass on my back. I chuckle as I start cutting straps out of one of the longer pieces. Once this is prepared, I again separate some of the braided silk and begin the process of sewing all the pieces back together. I didn't have enough leathers to make a flap for the top, but this is good for now. I repackage all my belongings into the newly improved bag and slide my arms into the straps. Straps could be an inch or two longer, but the fit is snug and stable. I vigorously move around, performing little hops and quick turns. The bag sways back and forth, shifting my weight uncomfortably. I remove the bag and then add a length of braided silk at the bottom. I don the bag once again and tie the new silk strap around my waist. Again I jump around a bit, testing the bag's stability and performance. This is much better now, the bag is more comfortable and doesn't restrict my movements. I re-equip my shield and spear and go back to performing the routines of blocking and thrusting while wearing the bag. The bag also offers me a level of back protection. I wouldn't go so far as to say it's armor, but it would stop a spider from piercing or slicing me. I then try to add it to my back slot in the inventory. The bag vanishes with the weight of all its contents. I open the system window and examine the paper doll. The bag appears in the slot and I focus on its information. Leather pack. This crudely made pack is decidedly functional. Again, the system's description seems kinda sus. The description, decidedly functional, are my own words. But the description of the kobold-style spear included information I didn't know. The descriptions that the system uses continue to suggest that it is in some way sentient. Based on the Isakai genre stories, magical worlds evolve a system as a method to give sentient beings a better chance to survive. In some stories, it's a gift imbued by the gods. In some stories, it's the spirit of the world creating defenses against planar or dimensional threats. These abilities or systems go hand in hand with gates, dungeons, towers, or portals. Regardless of which it may be, the existence or purpose of these constructs are to provide a place for gathering resources and experience. The materials are used to create stronger weapons and defenses, and the experience helps the people of the world become more formidable. With these benefits, the people can then defend against the invaders or demon kings that threaten them. I continue to perform my jabs and blocks despite my mind wandering and losing focus. I don't stop practicing but focus more on the shield skills. I'm determined to unlock a shield skill level 0 if possible. The temperature and humidity steadily climbs as we ease into mid-afternoon. At some point a dark flame-like shadow did start to flicker in and out of existence along the leading edge of the shield. So Shadow Strike will work with weapons. It's a bit tricky to use. I also practiced Summon Shadow in the same way. I continued till my head started to swim and I looked at my key levels. Current level 2, experience till next level 65, key 5 of 64. I'm too focused on this status window. I need to learn my own limits without constantly looking at the screen. It doesn't make sense for me to keep checking it during combat. If I rely on it less, I'll eventually need it less. I was of course surprised that I burned through all my ki. I've got to be more careful. I was just thinking about how I shouldn't rely on the status window so much. I'm tired and overheated. God, am I glad this world doesn't have mosquitoes. Maybe it does, but I haven't seen any yet. I do have a few small areas that might be insect bites. Maybe they're not. I hope they're not pimples. God, I don't want to deal with all that crap again. Maybe there will be more insects later in the season. There aren't any gnats either. It feels like late spring. I charge into the stream, stowing my bag and sandals away before splashing down unceremoniously. I rolled around in the water a few times before resurfacing into a sitting position. It's exciting to experience things like magic, and I have this sense of personal growth. It's like a dream come true. But will I at some point get used to all this? Will I at some point settle into a job and be as indifferent with life as I was in the last world? I'm not someone who sets goals. Maybe I should put effort into changing my lackadaisical ways. Now that word's a mouthful. Have I ever actually used that word in a conversation? I think that's mostly a useless word. Words like this just clog up my mind. They are wholly unnecessary and unwieldy. That word's just as bad as interlocutors. Now that is one truly useless shit word. I'll be damned if I can remember what it means. I do remember that every time I've come across it, I had to look up its meaning. But for the life of me, I can't remember its definition. Life without a smartphone is going to be rough. Hey system, what does interlocutors mean? I grin sheepishly to myself and the cool water washes over me. I turn my wrist and the spider shield catches the current and slowly pulls me along the smooth stone creek bed. I think there might be 7 or 8 more hours of daylight left. And my food is now cold. Absent mind strikes again. I'm so terrible at being smart. You would think that I would have found a solution to that by now. I emerge from the water and return to my boulder to dry off. 65 more experience till level 3. That's another 3 more spiders. They're dangerous. I can get seriously messed up by them. I should hold off on leveling for now. My priority should be getting back to civilization. If I level up near a town, I can always retreat to safety if I get injured. Out here alone, I'm more vulnerable. If I get a leg wound and can't walk easily, then I'm sunk. I have an unknown distance to go, and I'd rather not have to resort to dragging myself the entire way with my arms. 6 one, half dozen the other. If I'm a long way off, then making leg armor becomes a better survival choice. 1 cut to the inside of my thigh and I'm dead. A slash to the back of my knee, I'm crippled. Leg coverings can save me, so what's my play? More spider leather equals more survivability. Time passes and I consider my options. I was so hoping to find a road down here. I jinxed myself, I knew I would. If I found a road, everything would be less complicated. I've almost crossed this entire valley and no roads to be found. Do I make my way up or down the valley? Or should I go up to the top of the next hillside? The last hilltop was reasonably safe. I'll get up to higher ground before making camp today. This water is here if I need it. I made up my mind. With determination I stand and start off for the valley's edge. I'll travel till dark and all day tomorrow. If I don't continue to find water sources, I'll turn around and return to this valley. On second thought, this stream could lead to a small town or village. No, I made a decision I need to push on. What was it I read once? A decision should be made within 6 breaths. I can sit here and spin with indecision all day long. Neither choice is better than the other. They both have merit. Or heck, I could just toss my pathetic cudgel in the air and let chance decide for me. Not making a choice is still a choice. I chuckle to myself as I disappear into the forest once again. The sounds of the stream quickly fade away behind me. My journey quickly turns upward as I reached the far edge of the valley. Taking in my surroundings as I go, I press on while checking my key levels. I'm starting to acclimate to the wildlife here. I'm starting to ignore the strange bird calls and the sounds of insects. I'm still curious to see what makes each of these sounds. But I have a destination and need to stay focused. Keep my eyes on the prize, hilltop in 3 hours, then make camp. That's my goal. It's a realistic goal, and so long as nothing kills or maims me, I should be able to reach it without much ado. I seem to have done it again. I never say stuff like this while talking to others. The internal dialogue is completely different than the way I communicate with others. I wonder why I do this. Charisma of 4. The stat is so shit. But damn, I own that 4 charisma. As I ponder this, I reach a difficult area to navigate. I climb up knee-high boulders and jump up onto waist-high ledges. Getting in a bit of parkour today. If I am the one who has more ability, then why shouldn't it be my responsibility to bridge any gap in communication? So why do I speak more plainly with others? Do I tone it down, so to speak? Can others tell I'm doing this? Does it affect reactions and interactions with me? I pause my thoughts for a time. Some things are just beyond my ability to understand. If I keep thinking like this, I'll just end up making myself sick again. I don't have my medicine. I wonder if this is going to be a problem. Getting questions or problems stuck in my head can be crippling. Consider a problem from 1,000 different angles and perspectives. Internal dialogue going over the problem again and again, over and over, back and forth endlessly. Intelligence can be shit. It's a damn curse that others are blessed for not having. I don't think cyclical thinking is related to intellect, mental illnesses. Over the years, I've learned to catch myself falling into these thought traps. There are a few tricks I can use to distract myself long enough to break the circular thought patterns. My mental health or lack thereof goes hand in hand with high intelligence. They say an IQ of 135 is the sweet spot. Going beyond that and your high IQ becomes detrimental. I don't think I'm at that point, but I do think I'm close enough to understand it. And what about stat points? Is it bad to continue raising intellect? Ooh, I think that I've arrived. The ground level's off here, and I believe I have at least 2 or 3 more hours before sundown. I let myself get lost in thought again. I don't remember much about the trip up here. I need to pay more attention to my surroundings. Daydreaming can get me killed out here. The thought brings a grin to my face. Okay, now focus, get serious. I'll head along the hilltop till I find some water or a decent place to set up camp. I won't need a fire, the food is cooked already, I'll just eat it cold. I'd like to practice my spells a little before bed. I am still struggling with them and don't dare to rely on them during a fight. I lean down and examine the ground. A paw print twice the size of my hand is here. It rained recently and this huge beast left his prints in the soft earth. I want to call it a bear track, but it's not quite right. It's longer than it should be, but still close enough to what a bear's paw print should look like. I'm willing to bet this is what was making the loud bellowing roars the other day. Bears tend to roam over large areas. They often have more than one den or place that they stop to sleep. Bears roam in large circular paths. I can usually take a few days before they reach their starting point. Bears are big, they need large areas to forage, and based on the size of these tracks, this guy is extremely large. The area he forages must be gigantic. I can't be sure, but I'll bet he passed through here going the opposite way as me, then went down and crossed the valley. That's when I heard him bellowing. He likely won't be back through here for a while. I'm still not interested in staying here too long. He will eventually come back through here, and when he does I will hopefully be miles away. If I did run into him, I'm not going to do anything to it with this tiny spear. I wonder how beasts and monster levels work in this world. I continued traveling for another 20 minutes when my path reached a fallen tree. This tree also had a trunk with a large V in it, but the spacing was much closer together. Also, it wasn't laying flat to the ground. One side of the V had a 10-inch gap under it. This will be a tight fit, but I will work. I started scouting for fallen branches in the nearby vicinity. There wasn't much of a selection of groundwood here, but I decided to use some of the upper limbs formed the fallen tree. I didn't have an axe, but with effort I could cut a notch in the wood. Then I continued widening the notch till I was able to break the branch. This made for good overhead cover, but it was time-consuming. By the time I was satisfied, darkness was already starting to set in. Next comes the leaves and dirt. Once that was done, I continued to deepen the shelter by pushing dirt into the gap under the one side. Next comes the bedding. When I finally finished, it was fully dark. I crawled into my shelter and did my best to find a comfortable position. It was a tight fit, but it was snug and offered a lot of protection. I left my shelter after opening my stats page and began practicing with my Shroud of Shadow skill. I could get the skill to trigger about 2/3 of the time before figuring out the trigger. The trigger was simply the intent to move. I didn't need to actually move though. I just need the intent to move. I could just stand in place till the skill ended if I wanted to. It took about half a second to activate and lasted about 3 seconds. Each activation cost only 10 ki. I would activate the skill and it was like being plunged into darkness. The world appeared colorless and all surfaces were cold and smooth. I didn't have to wait the full 3 seconds for the skill to end. If I wanted the skill to end, then it simply ended. With timing I could end the skill just as my spear tip reached a target. The skill was weird to say the least. I flow along the ground as if I was two-dimensional, had no height. I'm just like a shadow. I would glide on the smooth surface of the world as if everything was covered in a sheet of ice. I could possibly attack from below a target. I'd want much more practice before trying this. Because the world was so smooth while in shadow form, making rapid turns was difficult. At one point, while trying to turn, I slid sideways into a tree and just continued to slide right up the tree trunk. Apparently I can climb objects like this. But the first time this happened I ended the skill and fell about 12 feet to the ground. I did a little roll and wasn't injured. I took frequent breaks to meditate and returned to experimented with the skill more. I tried to reach a low tree branch but slid off the tree and fell to the ground. I expended the rest of my ki to 11 points and then went to sleep. Day 6? The light of dawn was just now penetrating the forest as I crawled out of my shelter on my hands and knees. I rose up, my eyes still sleepy. I extended my arms outward into a big emerging stretch. I yawned loudly as I did this. Just then there was an ear-shattering roar as I felt hot breath against my skin. I opened my eyes and glanced to my side where I saw a giant toothy maw which seemed to encompass my entire field of view. The shock and horror caused me to stumble backward and crash down through the top of my shelter, sending branches and leaves in all directions. I sat there stunned and utterly horrified as I looked up at a ginormous bear that stood at least 12 foot tall at the shoulders. The bear just looked at me with some shit-eating grin on its face, as if proud of itself for startling me. Upon the back of the bear was a mounted rider. My mind spun, working at speeds it wasn't designed for. Then as if all my thoughts collided into one place, I called out, "I'm a traveler from another world and I believe I was brought here for a higher purpose." I didn't have much time to consider my words. This was all just a gut reaction. Decisions were made and I acted on them. The moments stretched on for what seemed forever. I continued to sit there unmoving, much too terrified to move to be more precise. The figure atop the bear scowled down at me before saying,
"How do you so easily share such dangerous information?"
"Well, I assume you are a druid and you're about to feed me to your companion. But now hopefully you won't want to take a chance of angering the gods. So if you could be so kind as to point the direction toward a town, I'll happily be on my way. Furthermore, I assume that you are a druid, then it's unlikely you will tell all the other druids about me. So I risk nothing and hopefully I get a chance at survival." She interrupted me before I could continue.
"I see, you are a clever barbarian. Much of that which you have spoken is truth. However, your cunning and finely crafted words will not guarantee your continued survival. You have disrupted the balance in this forest. You have taken from Dar's land and Dar will have tribute."
"I am happy to pay tribute to Dar. I have cooked food. I'm more than happy to give all I have to Dar. I paused for a moment. Except for my life. I'd like to have that when I leave.
Oh. Is that so, barbarian? Would you pay tribute to Dar with that which already belongs to Dar?
I would not. The servants of a landowner give crops grown from the master's land. The crops are not the tribute, the time and effort is the tribute. I hunted the food fairly, I took the time to prepare it. I offer my time and effort as tribute to Dar. I summoned my bag to my back. The spider legs were the last thing placed in, and I simply reached over my shoulder and retrieved them. I tossed them out of my shelter toward the bear. The bear lowered its head while sniffing, loud crunching followed. The elf, or what I assumed was an elf, scowled down at me from her perch atop the bear. I don't hear Dar complaining. Was my tribute accepted?
Do not presume to know the mind of Dar. You use words but gamble with your life. Your tribute is insufficient. You are correct to assume that Dar intends to consume you. As you would say, fairly. But now Dar has eaten, so then I shall now test your claims to a higher purpose. Below us in the valley, go upstream for half a day. There you will find a cave dungeon. Clear this blight from Dar's land or die. Succeed in this task, only then will your time and efforts forgive your trespass. Fail in this task, then your claims of a higher purpose are proven false. If you attempt to leave without accomplishing this task, then you will have the ire of Dar.
The bear turns to lumber off and the elf continues to glare downward at me as she vanishes out of sight.
Earn your place in this world if you will, outsider. But you are not welcome in Dar's land, you will do well in remembering this. You will not escape from my gaze. Hurry now, Dar is not patient and she grows hungry.
A ding rings out from someplace in my mind. I leveled up and several new icons appear at the edge of my vision. I leaned back, mind reeling as I catch my breath, then I take the time to have an emotional meltdown. After a time I unsummon my bag back into the inventory space. I push the broken pieces of my shelter's roof out of the way as I lean back. The bag under me prevents me from simply slumping onto the ground. I look upward into the forest's canopy as I click on the new icons. You have received a new quest. Quest, survive an encounter with Dar, the mythical beast that resides within this druid's glade. Quest complete. You survived an encounter with a mythical beast. New achievement, receive a quest from a mythical beast or demigod. Reward, you have received a passive boon, a mother's embrace. You have received a new quest, clear Dar's cave dungeon. Note, failure will likely result in death. I flipped through the pop-up screens as I read them over several times. I then returned to the status page. I now have an achievements page. I opened it up and then focused on a mother's embrace. The passive read, you are under the protection of a divine being while residing in her lands. The words don't feed the bears pops briefly into my mind. Okay, this has been quite the exciting morning. I survived breakfast with a mythical bear and her moody elf. What now? Am I an adopted bear cub? A mother's embrace? Is that a bear hug? I hate being me. I have a quest now, a goal. I did say I needed to start setting goals and stop being so damn lazy. I hate my life. I emerge from my shelter and start heading back down into the valley. The trek downward was smooth and uneventful. The air was chill and I briefly considered bathing in the stream but just continued on my path. My hunger grew as I traveled on. This is the first time since arriving in this world that I've had a clear destination since entering this new world. I was excited to go dungeon delving for the first time, but the surrounding circumstances were crap. A do or die mission at level 3. I reach up and touch the wound above my ear. I can feel the faint line of a scar there. So, I healed when I leveled, but it was an older wound, so then it leaves a scar. It was different with the wound on my forearm. It was a fresh wound, so it didn't leave a scar. I file this information away for later. I'm headed upstream but not along the water. The spiders seem to like building their nests over water and I'm not interested in dealing with spiders right now. I would however like more armor. Leg armor to be sure. I have a shield for protecting my chest, but no defenses for below my legs. As I walk I go over this morning's interactions in my mind. There's a lot here to unpack. She kept calling me a barbarian. I wondered why. I'm not a barbarian. Is a barbarian a sub-race of humans or a class? I believe that it can be either or both. Maybe the elf was just trying to insult me or... I guess I'm looking kind of barbaric. I'm just wearing boots and the skirt. I'm rocking the Conan style for sure. I don't recall much about druids. I know that they were seldom chosen in the RPG games like Dungeons and Dragons. When they get to level 10 they pick a forest and protect it for the rest of their lives. This makes them a poor choice for playable characters. Also, having beast companions makes it difficult for adventures in towns and cities. You basically have this overpowered weapon that you seldom get to use. This means that you're underpowered half the time. Time passes while I ponder various things of no importance. It's getting toward midday and I've passed several boulders with flat sides. You can occasionally get a naturally flat-sided boulder, but this is the 6th or 7th one I've seen, and some of them have more than one flat sides. I continue to walk and more stone structures start appearing. First was a large platform with what may once have been the feet of a statue. Then a section of paved road appears in the bottom of a stream that crosses my path. The earth was washed away, exposing it. There are clues that hint of some old settlement of some sort. In the distance I could see what was probably another spider nest over the small stream. The larger stream is someplace off to my right, and the two must come together nearby. The gentle slope to my left starts to form up into a barren rock cliff. No doubt a good place to find Dar's cave. I walk along the bottom of the cliff till finally large stone columns appear on both sides of an opening. A large arch adorned with carvings and relief sculptures of short men carrying objects toward the entrance. Well, this is some sort of a dwarven mine or trade route. The wide squat reliefs certainly look like dwarves wearing armored helms. The helms are all flat on top, not rounded like you would expect. There isn't much detail left of the worn stone surface. I turn my back toward the cliff and head onward till I reach the stream. Here are large stone platforms spaced out across the stream. The last remnants of a bridge for sure. I unsummon my shield and boots and I lower myself down in the shallow waters. I cool myself off as I relax and enjoy the feeling of the water flowing over me. I lie down on my back, my face just barely above the water, and look into the sky. There is some ominous feeling here. A pulsation of some ancient power just out of reach of my senses. I leveled up so my maximum ki is 64 now. I will try to track my ki usage manually as best I can. I can check the system between fights. I start considering how this is a dungeon cave. I have no light sources. I could craft some torches. The spider silk likely won't work. I would need tons of sap. If I had animal fats, then I could try making a grease lamp. The silk will work as a wick. I would also need to create a fire to do either of these. I've never made torches and I'm not sure how to do it correctly. This is potentially a complete fail situation. If there are no light sources in this cave dungeon, then I have no good solutions. I sit quietly and I take note of the passing time. I began to hear splashing sounds in the distance. I looked downstream and waited until I could see Dar and the elf approaching. Stay calm, I think to myself. I need their help and they know it. I'm under Dar's protection apparently, and I need to just accept that this ginormous bear isn't going to eat me. I stay sitting and continue watching them approach. Sitting is a passive, low-aggression position. The mountain-sized bear stops approaching as it reaches around 10 feet in front of me. Then the bear just lays down in the water on its belly. It lets out grunts and moans like an old lady easing down into her recliner. I look up to the elf and wait for, her is it? I pause. Him, maybe? I realize I have no clue of the gender. I've encountered people with preferred pronouns before, and so I consider the options. You, your, and yourself will work. The elf dismounts and approaches while keeping its eyes on me. I wait to be addressed.
You hesitate here as Dar grows hungry. Why do this? Are you afraid to enter the dungeon?
I consider for a moment why she threatened me with the bear. Don't I have her protection? I look to the elf and say, honestly, I'm worried about lacking a light source. I'm not sure if you know this, but humans see poorly at night and we are likely to be completely blind in a cave.
What will you do then, human? Do you not have light magic or some such equipment hidden from sight?
No, I don't have anything like that. I'm low level and I just have the skills that came with my monk class. I'm sitting here trying to think of a way to make torches or a lamp. This could be time-consuming and success is uncertain. The elf sits in the water next to me and stares back at Dar. Neither of us spoke for a time. I look over to the elf. Do you know what I will find in there? Was it considered when you gave this task to me? Are you hoping that I will fail? It seems like I'm being disposed of. Again, time passes. Dar starts letting out low growls and low bellows. The elf looks on as if listening to Dar.
Some of what you say is true. The dungeon is new. I could feel its presence and I was on my way here to deal with it. I discovered you, so I observed you. You did no harm to our kobolds. You were not wasteful in your hunting. Well, not excessively. You were making equipment, some leniency can be given. This is a weak dungeon, but its existence is offensive to nature. Inside you will find the unliving, and so this dungeon will not be tolerated within Dar's lands. It is by chance that such an easy dungeon has become your test. It is unlikely that it will succeed in disposing of you.
Some time passes as we both watch Dar drink from the stream.
While you are here, you will build no structures, you will light no fires, you will neither hunt nor kill the creatures. Do not test these rules. Your words will not save you. Now come with me, human.
The elf with an uncertain gender stands up, stepping out of the water and walks in the direction where the opening is in the cliff. I quietly follow along behind him. They. I summon the shield to my arm along with the spear and boots. She spoke of my hidden equipment. I don't feel the need to hide my secrets from the elf. Dar remains in the stream behind me. She stops and walks in a small circle. Then while looking at me she points to a spot on the ground.
Sit. Be still, be silent. Wait here.
I follow the instructions as I sit down onto the forest floor. The elf begins to take her clothing off. Embarrassingly, I look away, but I can't help but take glances toward her. The elf is absolutely without question a her, a slim, small-breasted, and sensual her. If she is true to lore, then she could be hundreds of years old. I'm not interested in older woman. I humph to myself as I'm amused by my own thoughts. She sings as she slowly dances in a circle around me. I feel all warm and fuzzy. Butterflies and moths appear in the air around us. The sounds of nature seem to amplify as hundreds of birds and insects seem to join in with the singing. I feel a pressure start to push me down. I put my arm out to brace myself, but my arms are weak. I slump over on my side and the light begins to fade. I lay there struggling to move. I see flowers begin to erupt from the ground, growing at speeds that are impossible. I can actually feel them growing. A line of small mushrooms emerge along with tendrils of grass. It's like thousands of growing hairs. Tiny little human-like insects start to appear and flitter about. They stare at me with their insect-like eyes. I am helpless and so I sleep. When I open my eyes it's dark. I sit up, once again I find myself naked. My hands brush the lush, soft grass around me.
Be still, human, days have passed you while you slept. Dar has seen it fit to prepare you for this dungeon. Put out your hands, drink. This brew will give you sight in the darkness. Be strong, fear not. You've held on to survival thus far. You will drink if you wish, continuing to possessing it.
She places a smooth wooden cylinder in my hand and moves it up to my lips. Is it bamboo or something similar? She practically forces it to my mouth. It's warm and salty. Tastes like blood.
There is no need to call out in pain. Now listen, I will speak but once. Dar believes you are of her realm. You appeared here in her lands and she believes you are hers. I do not believe this. She will allow you to stay if you break no rules. But I tell you and you must listen. These lands are fragile, they cannot support a predator your size. I have toiled for 2 decades to restore these lands and I will not have you undo my work in mere months. When the snow falls you will die. You cannot survive here, so then you must leave. The berries I give you are for small injuries. Use them sparingly. You will not get more. The food is a day's substance each. There is no need to chew them. Complete your task and leave. You will receive no more assistance. You have not earned the gifts bestowed on you. You do not deserve them, human. Each potion of sight will last but a short time. Do not waste time. Complete your task quickly, then walk upon any straight path. You will find a king's road there. Your return will not be allowed.
While she was speaking I felt a tingling behind my eyes. Do not call out in pain, she had told me. I think that this tingling is going to suck really bad. By time she said the words, your return will not be allowed, the tingling started to feel like electric shocks. And then the pain. I felt as if someone had slammed me in the forehead with a hammer. I went to my knees as I sharply inhaled. Be strong, she says. I face planted into the ground as I passed out. I can't tell if it was seconds or minutes. I woke up. At first I thought that it was day, but the light was a bluish purple. My sight distance was only about 20 feet, but I could see everything clearly. Around me was a circle of small mushrooms. A fairy ring if I'm not mistaken. Next to me on the ground were my things. Each of the items were recrafted and elegant. The sandals were now a soft, supple, and finely crafted pair of boots. Fine, intricate stitching. The soles were hard and textured. There was a row in intricate leaf designs around the top. My leather skirt was there, but it was reinforced and straps added to the inside of the thighs. There was a cup in the front. It was small. I wonder what she was trying to say. I'm strong, I'm fast, and I'm smart. But the small crotch cup was perhaps a jest that hurt my feelings. Then again, maybe it was made for an elven-sized package. I think my ego will accept that explanation. They fastened around the knees. There was a pair of pants. A leaf pattern along the outside of the leg going from waist to calf. They seem a bit short, but with the boots you won't be able to tell. Leather shoulder pauldron. Or maybe they're spalders. I honestly don't know what the difference is. These gifts look like they have value. She must have spent days crafting them. It's a kindness I don't understand. I mean, if I die in this dungeon, then she just wasted a tremendous amount of time and effort. I look around, I can't see far, but she is obviously not here. She did say that I can't escape her gaze. I started by putting on the pants. A perfect fit. A stretchy material, but they feel like suede. I can't be sure of the color, but the color is different than the other items. Next, the boots. A perfect fit. These feel great, but without socks I think they're going to get slick inside. Next, I put on the leather skirt. The straps laced up around the knees and protected my groin and inner thigh. The strips of leather each had a small detail. Some were leaves, some were flowers. I'm not going to complain. On the right side was a knife sheath. I looked around for my knife. Seeing it, I bent down and grabbed it. I stood back up and placed it into the sheath. The knife was unaltered. I'm not complaining, maybe she doesn't do weapons. The sheath was wide enough for the blade even with its curved shape. It was, however, a little short. The seam was only halfway open on one side. I suppose that helps while drawing it quickly. Next is the backpack. As I reach for my new bag, I can't help but think that these are fancy pants. I'm a manly man and my delicate, fragile ego can't deal with sissy pants and skirt. I'll sell them the first chance I get. I'm not a mean person, but it's just not a style I'm going for. The bag's craftsmanship was similar and very well done. My spider-ass bag was now shaped like a proper backpack. I lifted it off the ground and I could feel that it wasn't empty. I reached up and touched my face. The skin around my eyes was all hairy now. Then my attention went back to the bag. No, this wasn't my spider-ass bag. I checked the system. It's still in there with all my collected items. If I'm going to face the undead, I'll want the pathetic cudgel. The spear will probably be useless. So then the backpack is new. I scratched the weak old scruff on my chin. It's just as hairy as it is around my eyes. I bet that I look like a wolf boy right now. The potion lasts a short time. Then what? Will I pass out in pain when it wears off? Do I wait till it wears off to drink another one? The pain was gone when I came around. At least it's not a lasting pain. I opened the bag to peer in. A pouch, 3 more wooden tubes with stoppers, and a small delicate box. I reached in and pulled out the box. There was a leaf carved into the top. I fiddled with it, unable to open it. Then with some examination I could see the lid was made to slide. Inside were 4 large round berries, each with a stem and a tiny leaf. I closed the box and put it back. Next, the pouch. There were 6 almond-shaped nuts inside. I placed one in my mouth. No need to chew, she said. I swallowed it. There were 5 more. When was the last time I ate? I was asleep and she said days have passed. The pouch was fashioned to be worn around the neck. I set the bag back on the ground and then placed my head through the loop and it seemed a good length. There was a tree-shaped symbol embroidered onto the bag. I grabbed the shoulder pads next. I examined it for a time. There was a leather collar that laced up the back and straps that tied under the arms. I unlaced the collar, slid my head into it. I then pulled the lacing till it was snug. I let the laces dangle down my back. I don't like the dangles, I don't like the way they feel sliding against my skin. It's just as annoying as tags on my t-shirts. I put the backpack on. Next I looked around for my spear. I didn't see it right away, but next to me were 2 spears leaning against a tree. I walked over to them. I picked up the new spear. It was longer and more flexible. It was tipped with something I didn't recognize. Ooh, carved bone probably. It was about 8 inches and serrated on both sides. It It was pointy and sharp enough to do its job. It was also decorated with darkened lines that simply repeated its shape. The spear stave was intricately carved with some language unknown to me. The script wound around the top 2 foot of the stave just under the spear tip. I don't think the spear is enchanted or anything. I assume the script is likely part of some elven cultural purpose. Aside from these details, there was a small crossbar where the script ended. When I fought the spider and my spear pierced all the way through, a crossbar or stopper like this would have prevented the spider from getting too close. I could also have pinned it to the ground. It's a good addition. Why didn't I think of it? I held the new spear in my left hand and my kobold spear in the right. Then I swapped both into my inventory. This brought the knife into my hands. I placed the dagger into the sheath on the right side of the skirt. The fit was snug and its placement would make it easily accessible if I needed it. I then placed the bag onto my shoulders and swapped it out with my spider-ass bag that was in my inventory. I reached up over my shoulder and fished out the pathetic cudgel. I dropped the cudgel onto the ground, then bent down and grabbed the shield. Under my shield was one side of a leather gauntlet set. I turned the shield over and there was a matching gauntlet attached to the shield. In addition, the silk loop I was using as a handle was now gone and there was a handhold made from a similar bone that matched the spear tip. Oh, okay, a rigid handhold. That fixes the stability issue I was having with the shield. I didn't take the time to solve that issue either. I slid my arm down into the gauntlets-like brace and pulled the laces tight. The shield was greatly improved. It looked similar, but all the spider silk was removed and replaced with much more intricate and precise stitching. A lot of care and attention went into this shield. I put on the matching bracer on the other arm and laced it up securely. The elf gives me the feeling that she didn't like me, but then she did all this work. Then when giving it to me, she made a big deal about how I didn't deserve it. I'm clueless about how I should rationalize all that. Maybe she loves her bear. The bear gifted me all these things. The efforts she put into them was not to show me kindness, but to somehow show respect to the bear. I continue to ponder, maybe it's a cultural thing with elves. The item's quality reflects back on the one who gifted it. Maybe it's none of these, maybe she did this out of kindness, but she was putting emphasis on the fact that she wanted me to leave. She's not wrong though. If I can't build a fire or any structures, then I don't see how I could survive a winter here. Oh, I've got it. Her charisma is worse than mine. For sure, that's got to be it. I head over to the entrance below the rock cliff. Inside, about 10 foot past the entrance, was a glowing, swirling portal. It looked light blue to me, but the effects of the potion made me uncertain. I took a deep breath. I walked through into the light. I felt disoriented. For a brief moment, I couldn't tell which way was up. I stumbled for a few steps as I emerged out the other side of the portal. Immediately, 2 skeletons attacked me. These weren't human skeletons, they were short skeletons with the tops of their skulls flat. These must be dwarven skeletons. Me and the first skeletons collided when I emerged from the portal and I knocked it back. Neither one of us had the reaction time to do anything about it. But it quickly regained its footing and lunged toward me. I just went to town on it with the club. I easily knocked off one of its arms and its ribs went in all directions. Finally, it broke in half and skittered toward the second one. This one had a rusty mace. It held the mace in both hands over its head and it lumbered slowly toward me. This thing is slow. I've recovered from my initial surprise, but now watching this thing lurch toward me, I lost any fear I may or may not have been having. I waited with my shield up. As it reached me, it physically stopped and paused before bringing its mace downward. Oh man, are these things slow. I had been ready to activate Summon Shadows, but it wasn't necessary. I sidestepped and let the mace crash to the flood. I then smacked it on the head with my pathetic cudgel and sent the head flying. It bounced off the ground and then stopped when it reached the portal. I guess they can't leave. The rest of the skeleton collapsed into a pile on the floor. The first skeleton crawled toward me, digging its finger bones into the floor. These things are weak sauce. I gave a little jump forward and then used Shadow Strike and I came down on it with my fist. The skull shattered under the force of my blow. I remained there and just looked around. I'm in a long tunnel, there are wooden supports and cross beams leading forward and out of sight. I examined the skeleton at my feet when the other one just steps away began to disappear. It was as if it was evaporating bit by bit. Then before the first had finished dissolving or whatever it's doing, the second one begun to do the same. The first one left a small clear marble and a copper coin. Or maybe the coin was already there, I'm not sure. But the second one just left a marble. I walked deeper into the dungeon. After some distance, a set of metal rails were visible on the floor. They just started here, they didn't extend all the way to the entrance. A mining cart was nearby. I approached the cart when a skeleton stood up from the cart and aimed a crossbow at me. I triggered Shroud of Shadows and released the skill when I was behind the skeleton. My club was in mid-swing. After I materialized and my swing connected, it exploded, sending bone bouncing off the nearby walls. That's 3. This one didn't drop a core, but it did drop 6 copper coins. I guess not all drops are equal. The long hallway stretches forward out of sight. A gauntlet dungeon, it will get progressively more difficult, ending in a boss battle of some sort. I continued walking. The problem with this sight potion is that the skeletons can see me a little before I can see them. The ones with crossbows are a problem. It's possible for them to get off a shot before I spot them. I start to jog in a quick zigzag pattern. I'm on a time limit. If I run out of potions, I'll be stuck in here. I don't know if they will respawn behind me. I press on. The next group was 3 skeletons. One had a shield, but none of them had weapons. I kicked the first one, knocking back off its feet. Then, while activating the Shadow Strike, I kicked the one to my right in the face with the edge of the shield, sending it stumbling backwards into the tunnel wall. That was a good kick. Then I backhanded the third one to my left with my shield, knocking it off balance and following through with the club, ending it. Next, I turned back to right and finished the second one with a backward swing of the club. A ding sounded in my head. The last one left the shield on the ground as it stood back up. It was still hunched over when I shattered its skull. These things are so weak, I thought to myself. Male, human, dimensional traveler, age 16, strength 9, agility 9, constitution 6, intellect 13, wisdom 6, charisma 4. Class, monk, current level 3, experience till next level 170, key 73 of 73, current skills, language common, literacy common, basic, jewelry crafting level 2, martial skills. Basic hand-to-hand level 3, martial weapon skills, spear. Level 1, cudgel level 1, martial defenses. Light armor level 0, shield level 0. Racial traits. Adaptation from human, energy manipulation from dimensional traveler, magical affinity, light and darkness. Personal magic, paper doll, known skills. Create key level 1, shadow strike level 1, prismatic burst level 1, shroud of shadows level 1, and the last one is summon key level 1. Not much has changed. My key levels reset when I leveled. Shield and light armor are listed under defenses, and I now have a cudgel skill. I wonder if I can get shield charge or bash skills. I seem to like both. We'll have to wait and see. I doubt this dungeon run is over. I picked up another core and 8 more copper coins before I continued down the tunnel. I would have taken the shield, but that disappeared just like the bones did. I traveled for a few minutes till the tunnel opened into a wide fissure with a stone bridge spanning it. A crossbow bolt slammed into my hip as 2 skeletons appeared running toward me. Each of the skeletons had a pickaxe in their hands. Limping, I moved to the right so the one skeleton was behind the other. These 3 skeletons were stronger and faster than the ones before them. The skeleton swung the pickaxe one-handed as I used summon key above my shield to deflect it. I should have used prismatic burst. Too late now. The pickaxe rebounded off my skill with such force it took the skeleton's arm from the elbow with it. It disappeared down the fissure. With my right arm I swung the club and the skull went looking for the pickaxe. The rest of the skeleton slid along the ground as I stepped forward to engage the next skeleton. Behind this one a skeleton appeared brandishing a crossbow like a club. This time I deflected the pickaxe with my club. Unfortunately, the arm stayed intact, but the skeleton spun around as it lost its footing as it became airborne. I stumbled forward, finished it off from behind just and the crossbowman reached me. I simply blocked the makeshift club and used Shadow Strike and I popped its head off. After combat I pulled out the crossbolt. The head of the crossbow bolt came off and stayed in my hip. Exploring with my fingers I could feel it under the skin next to the bone. I removed my spider dagger and dug it out. It was a horrid-looking thing with 2 barbs protruding out the sides. I then examined the wound and considered if I should use a healing berry. In all honesty, I think I should save them. The status screen says I need 135 more experience till next level. These skeletons seem to be about 15 experience each. That's only 9 more. I fought 9 before I received my first injury. If this is a metric I can use to determine how I'm doing, then I should level with only taking 1 or maybe 2 such injuries. I'm gonna tough it out. I can change my mind later if I need to, The bones finish evaporating and I collect up 2 cores and 8 copper. That's a total of 5 cores and 23 coppers so far. I'm getting 1 core for every 2 skeletons. I don't know if this is above or below average. Also, I have no idea what the value of the coppers are. I move slowly over the stone bridge. This thing is rickety as all hell. And of course it starts to collapse when I reach the middle. I use Shroud of Shadows and glide to the far side. When I materialize safely on the other side, I turn back and see one side of the bridge plunge into darkness. It never made a sound. I listened for a good long while and no sounds of stone crashing onto stone echoed back up from the depths. It must be a dungeon thing. I move on. I decide to change up my tactics. I doubt there will be traps in this dungeon. I just start running straight forward. No zigzagging this time. I encounter a group of 4 this time, 1 with a crossbow and 3 with picks. I activate Shroud of Shadows and the bolt was fired a moment later, bouncing off into the distance behind me. I emerged behind the skeleton with the crossbow and gave it a mighty overhead blow. Next, I charged forward, shield charging the next 2 and knocking them forward down onto the ground. When I reached the first skeleton, I again blocked its strike with Summon Key and deftly knocked its head off the nearby wall. The skeleton behind me grabbed my leg and bit down onto the back of my boot. Thank goodness for the footwear. I could have been hobbled by this weak-ass skeleton. I lifted my foot and crushed it under my other boot. Taking a step forward, I gave the last one an overhead swing. The head slammed down on the floor and then bounced clear up to the ceiling of the tunnel before falling once more and bouncing away. This time I received 1 core and 12 coppers. 6 cores and 35 coppers for 13 skeletons. One could say each one was worth a half core and 2.5 coppers. There really is no point for me to keep track of this. My mind just does these things. Maybe it's a way to distract myself from anxiety. I decide to rest here and meditate. My key is below half. I need 5 more skeletons to level and it will reset my key and heal me. But that last fight used a lot of key and I want at least 20 more key before continuing. I sit and begin meditating with the create key skill. I really should meditate more often. I can feel slight improvements to my circulation each time I do this. The ball of force seems to keep getting smaller and the rolling churning sensation seems to be much smoother and uniform. Also, I swear skill activations are slightly faster than before. Time passes and I continue onward in a slow sprint. 70 experience till next level. This time the tunnel opened out into a room. As soon as I cleared the door frame, crossbolts came raining down at me from every direction. If I had been walking, I probably would have died. The problem here is that I can't see any of the crossbow wielders. There is, however, a dwarven skeleton wearing chainmail and wielding a war hammer and shield. Its eye sockets visible through the openings in the helm. I activate my movement skill, Shroud of Shadows, and approach the armored skelly. This time I burst back into existence and immediately use Summon Key to blast it right in the chest. This blow bypassed its shield and weapon. A direct hit. This knocked it backwards through the air and it luckily lost its hammer as it clattered onto the floor. Knowing that the skeletons didn't load their crossbows after firing last time, I dared to take a look around. Behind the armored skelly was 2 ramps leading upward in both directions along the back wall. A tapestry hung between the 2 ramps. Based on what little I've seen of the room, I guess this must be a large circular room. The armored skelly was visible from the tunnel. But with this crap vision I'm using, I didn't see it till after I was halfway across the room. Anyone else with better vision would have seen the armored skelly and walked in. Then, as soon as they entered the room, they would have been shot from someplace up above. I'm assuming the ramps in the back of the room would lead me up into a gallery that encircled the room. Leaving the armored skelly there where he landed, I charge up the left side ramp. I quickly came up on a single skelly. It raised up its crossbow like a club. When I gave it a swing from my right side, it went right down over the edge. I did this with every skelly I encountered. There were 6 in total. All of them went down over the edge. I tried to knock off their heads in the process. I may have gotten lucky and even killed a few. Others may have died from the fall. I eventually reached the other downward ramp. Without descending, I peered down into the room, could see the armored skelly ready and walking toward me. I leapt into the air while charging up Prismatic Burst to full. Normally, I triggered the skill by stomping down my foot. This time I triggered it right on the skelly's shield as it raised it to defend itself from my attack. A thunderous boom erupted and the shield was blasted across the room as it scattered the skeleton in all directions. I then started jogging around the room, finishing off the crossbowmen. I should level any second now. The adrenaline helped with the pain in my hip. Most of the remaining skellies had lost their crossbows and didn't pick them back up. So these were just unarmed skeletons left. I smashed 2 of them when I finally heard the ding. I finished off the next 4 with almost no effort. I chose not to use any more skills after I leveled. Didn't even need to really. I jogged around the room a few more times, making sure I got them all. The room is bigger than the 20 foot of visibility I have, so I didn't want any surprises. Once I was certain the room was completely cleared, I began to collect my loot. 2 cores, one was different than the others. It was a larger marble and it looked different. It was at this point that my eyes started to sting. I took off the backpack and grabbed one of the wooden tubes. It does look like bamboo. I wasn't sure of the proper use for the potion, but I waited till it started to feel like shocking before I drank it. Lucky for me, I didn't have the whole hammer to the head feeling this time. I didn't pass out either. Soon the pain died down and I counted out my coins. I had 1 big silver coin and 10 coppers. This brings the total to 7 cores of the same size, 1 slightly larger core, 45 coppers and 1 silver. Okay, so if this was the boss fight, then I should look around for a treasure room. Between the 2 ramps was a large cloth hanging from the ceiling to the floor. It depicted what looked like a shield and 2 hammers on a lighter colored circle. I can't be sure of the colors as I'm using some strange potion effect to see with. I grabbed the large cloth and pulled it free from the wall. Behind it was a large metal door that reached clear up to the ceiling. So this was just a mini-boss. The door had reliefs that depicted dwarves holding glowing hammers. A religious depiction of some sort. The hammers with light rays around it must be the holy symbol of some unknown dwarven god. I don't know anything about the gods and stuff in this world, so the imagery is meaningless to me. There is the big dwarf in the middle with the big hammer and a dwarf to each side with smaller hammers. The smaller hammers are more like small sledgehammers. Each of them are covered in armor. The dwarf in the middle is the only one without a shield and not wearing a helm. So, okay, then a boss room with a boss and 2 more mini-bosses. Probably just like the armored one I just fought moments ago. That one took a direct hit from Summon Key and then it was at ground 0 for Prismatic Burst. I don't know exactly how much damage that was in total, but it's easily triple or more than that of the smaller skellies. Then the big dwarf in the middle. The boss baddie, probably a paladin or cleric. Normally in games healing magic kills the undead, but if it's using negative energy that could heal undead. It's the difference between heal and harm spells. They're opposites like light and darkness. The thought irks me. If it's going to heal or even worse buff the other 2, then I need to kill the big one first. I'm getting a bad feeling about this. Class, Monk, current level 4, experience till next level 170, key 91 of 91, unspent attribute points, 4, current skills, language common, literacy common basic, jewelry crafting level 2, martial skills. Basic hand-to-hand level 3, martial weapon skills, spear, level 1, cudgel level 1, shield level 1. If each of the normal skellies are 15 experience, then that big one was more like 30 experience. It also dropped a larger core. If I'm understanding this right, then the boss should have a core then even larger than that. It's like the normal skeletons are levels 1 or 2, then mini-bosses are like level 5, and the boss should be double, so guessing it's level 10. I really think doing this dungeon solo is a bad idea. I have 1 unused sight potion left if I could have saved that potion. No, bad idea, I would have likely fallen off the bridge in the dark. It would have been nice to leave and come back later. That could have been a good way to farm experience, but it's do or die. I'm being pushed into this boss room. The stakes are high, my life is on the line. I've done a fantastic job so far. I'm going in full power. Take the big guy down first, then deal with the minions. I take several minutes to calm my nerves. I reach out and push the door. The heavy doors squeals and groaned as they slowly inch open. That was difficult. I wonder if I just passed a strength test of some sort. As the door opened, bright fire light assaulted me. The effects of the potion also seem make me sensitive to light. But the room before me is fully lit. Or maybe it's dimly lit and I'm sensitive to the light. Either way, the room is damn bright. The room isn't that big. There is a low altar with 2 armored dwarven figures kneeling before it. Behind the altar is a dwarf on a large throne-like chair. In his hands is a long staff with a hammer's head at the top. A frickin' 2-handed war hammer. Damn my terrible luck. Fight doesn't start till I enter the room. I could slide in and prismatic burst all 3. That will interrupt any attempt to buff. But that might damage the altar. The altar is in an important location. The Stooges won't cross or damage the altar, so it's an obstacle. 91 points to work with. It takes at least 2 solid hits with 10-point skills to kill an unbuffed Stooge. That's 40, and the main boss is at least twice as difficult. That's 120. Fail? Okay, try again. My movement skill is only 5 points. Shadow Strike is also 5 points. A single Shadow Strike takes down a normal Skelly no problem. That's 10 points for a combo. 2 combos is 20 points. 4 for 40, 52 points left. Slow and steady wins the race. Should I spend my attribute points? I'd rather not. If I run out of key, I think I have a solution. I'm betting the door's close behind me too. What else? What's that? There is a chest in both back corners. There's stone hands reaching out of the wall securing the chest in place with a dwarven face on each side of the chest. Trap. Obvious trap, but what kind? Wish I could get closer. It looks like the faces all have open mouths with round cheeks like they're blowing. So, a jet of wind. Darts. Or maybe fire or fireballs. That's plan B. My plan B sucks. The good old chandelier setup. Ropes leading off to the side walls holding up a huge wooden ring covered in candles. The stage is set. Let's get this show on the road. I confidently enter the room and walk right up under the chandelier. All 3 of my enemies stand and face me. The boss raises the hammer into the air over his head and begins to radiate a crimson light. The 2 Stooges approach me and also start to glow in a soft crimson light. Here we go. I fade into shadow and slide quickly right between the Stooges. I slide up and over the altar right up to the boss and try to shadow strike him in the face. He stops channeling his spell and successfully blocks the shield punch. I then give him a good swipe with the cudgel. That's 1 hit. I turn and hop back over the altar just as both the Stooges passed around to the altar's other side. That's good. I go back to standing under the chandelier. The Stooges turn around and approach me once again, and the boss raises up his hammer and begins to glow same as last time. Just like last time, I slide forward up to the boss, but this time I swing the club. The club is blocked and I shadow strike with the shield, scoring a hit. I turn and jump back over the altar, returning to the spot under the chandelier. This time things play out different. The boss points the hammer toward me as the Stooges close in. As the Stooges reach my position, I Shroud of Shadows again, but this time I head to where the chandelier is anchored to the wall by a rope. A large hammer-shaped light blasts across the room, striking the double doors, slamming them shut. I emerge from shadow, place my cudgel into my left hand. I then draw the spider dagger and strike at the rope. Damn, it didn't cut. I take a second swipe and the rope cuts free. The chandelier falls directly onto one of the Stooges, but misses the other. The boss raises his hands and begins to glow. Here we go. I slide into the shadows and head to the boss. This time I emerge while standing on his chair. I get a good overhead blow in while using the cudgel in both hands, then follow it up with a shadow strike which I have to reactivate and give a good kick to the back. Then just as the boss turns to strike me with the hammer, I slide away to the Stooge under the chandelier and give him a good kick upside his helm. From this position, I can see that he's completely pinned on his stomach under the chandelier. I want to whittle him down rather than engage the other. I want that one to just run back and forth chasing me. Speak of the devil, here he is. Once again I slide up over the altar to attack the boss. This is where things go wrong. Just as I emerge from shadow, the boss does some spinning attack. I put my shield up and try to summon ki. The timing is off and I get knocked off my feet. I think my arm is broken. If it's not broken, then it's definitely cracked. Just as I'm about to hit the floor, I try to use my Shroud of Shadows skill. It doesn't activate. I slam onto the hard stone floor. Damn shit, I landed right on my shield arm. This plan seems like a complete bust. Time for plan B. From a prone position I again activate Shroud of Shadows. This time I don't go over the altar, I instead head directly away from the boss and up the wall, touching the ceiling. Okay, you can't go across the ceiling. So instead I vaulted off the wall and was soaring down right on top of the boss while I charged up Prismatic Burst. I'm going to catch both in this blast. The boss held the two-handed hammer in a defensive position, so I released my skill right on the shaft of the hammer with a stomp. Both the boss and the Stooge flew away to opposite walls as I deftly landed on my feet. I check my key levels. 46 points left. The summon key didn't activate or cost me key. I swapped my spear and cudgel and sprinted toward the chest next to the boss. The boss stood up and raised his hammer, beginning a charge as I used my spear tip to dig into the lid of the box. With an upward motion, the box flipped open and flames burst out of the walls, spraying burning liquid all over both the boss and myself. I tried to slide into the shadows, but the skill refuses to activate. I charge up Prismatic Sphere to its lowest setting and blast all the burning liquids off me. The small outburst did nothing to the boss, but dozens of candle-sized flames erupted from me and landed on everything. Some on the altar, some on the throne, and some on the stooge who was now right on top of me. I'm covered in burns. My skin feels like it's stretched and pulled tight onto my body. This time I was able to activate Shroud of Shadows and then slide into the shadows. I slid to the skelly that was pinned and swapped back to my cudgel. With the boss writhing in flames and the stooge was completely opposite me on the other side of the altar. I went to town on the skelly motionless by feet. 41 points left. I gave one good stomp onto the skelly before the Shadow Strike skill expired. This club is pathetic. I throw the cudgel at the boss, summoning the elven spear into my hands. I walk around and stood between both the skellies. The boss just stood there turning around in circles, waving its arms as he burned furiously. The stooge, however, closed the distance between us. Once again I used Shroud of Shadows emerge behind it. I sank my spear in all the way to the stopper. Then with all my strength I pushed the skelly toward the burning boss. This knocked the burning boss down and then the stooge tripped over him. I held the stooge in place as they both burned and writhed in liquid fire. As I held them there I checked my key levels. Key 37 of 91. Experience till next level 170. I used my spear to keep pushing the stooge around, preventing them from standing up. Eventually my experience ticked by 30 points. I now stabbed and pierced the boss. Each time it tried to stand up I jabbed and pushed him back down. My experience ticked by 75. My status now says 65 EXP till next level. I went over and finished off the last remaining enemy. I got another 30 EXP. The fight was over. I sighed with relief and I heard a ding and several icons appeared at the edge of my vision. I opened the first. Quest complete, clear Dar's Cave dungeon. Reward, you receive 150 experience points. You have gained a level. New achievement acquired. Beginnings, new achievement acquired. Pond. You have gained a level. Wait, I just double leveled? Class, Monk, current level 6, experience till next level 215, key 102 of 102, unspent attribute points, 6. I totally cheesed this fight. I played pathing games with one, got one with a chandelier and put a good dot on the boss. I pawned this dungeon. I opened the system and read the new entries. Beginnings, congratulations. You cleared your first dungeon. Reward, you receive future advancement bonus. Your next experience reward will be doubled. Pawned, congratulations. You soloed a dungeon equal or higher than your current rank. Reward, 75 experience points. Note this reward was affected by another achievement and is doubled. 150 total experience was rewarded instead. Wow, fantastic. I need to loot these chests and leave quickly. I pick up my loot. I get one of the slightly larger cores, but the boss didn't drop any. I'm sure that's a bad thing. The bigger cores are certainly going to be worth more. Next I received 2 more silver coins and a metal ring. It's just a thin band really. The drops seem trash. I go over to the dwarven faces and examine them. I'm glad the trigger was opening the chest and not a pressure plate in front. It saved my ass, but now it's protecting my treasure. I considered things for a moment, then went to the still burning throne. I searched it carefully and found 3 buttons. I pressed the first button, nothing happened. I pressed the second button and all 4 of the faces began to spew jets of flame. This stuff was like napalm. It sprayed out all over the stone floor, but didn't hit me at the throne and it didn't reach the altar. But if I had tried walk around the altar, the boss might have sprayed me with the fire. This was one of the boss's sneak attacks. I chose to go up and over the altar, not around it. Good call. Another moment where I made an unintentionally good decision making saved my ass. I pressed the third button and the flames stopped. With some thought I pressed the middle button again, nothing happened. I smiled as I walked over to the chest. The third button turned the traps off. I confidently opened the chest. Inside this chest was a book, a light blue potion, and 40 copper coins. In the other chest was a very heavy pair of leather boots reinforced with metal, and 1 silver coin and 10 copper. I remove my backpack and all my loot. I have 2 spider cores, 7 small skelly cores, 1 larger core, 90 copper coins, for silver coins, a metal ring, a book with a picture of a hammer and the title Hammer Strike. Then a small light blue vial, and the heavy dwarven boots. A buzzing sound started and another portal started to form. This was my exit. If I stay here, I could get trapped when the dungeon collapses. In some stories, you have to run back to where you entered. I'm glad this world is one that just gives you the exit. I stepped through and it was just the last few moments before dawn. I unsummoned my gear and went to lay down in the water.